Chapter 335. Ordinary Friends. Today was Qin Sheng's first official day in Tsingtao. It seemed that Tsingtao was quite welcoming to him. Today's weather was exceptionally good. The sun was bright and warm, and there was no sea breeze at all. Standing in front of the French windows, Song Jiqiu could see many tourists and passers-by strolling by the seaside. They were happy and leisurely, with bright smiles on their faces. Song Jiqiu stayed in bed for a while. After Qin Sheng went to make breakfast, she got up, took a shower, and changed into pajamas. Then she lay lazily on the deck chair in front of the French windows, enjoying the comfortable sunshine on her face. After a while, she took out her mobile phone and made a few calls. She had an appointment today to meet two friends, both of whom were the children of the Song family's partners in Tsingtao, who were close to her. Her plan was completely disrupted by Qin Sheng's arrival. After making the phone calls, Song Jiqiu sighed, feeling somewhat upset. Both she and Qin Sheng were adults, and they did not regret what had happened last night. However, what should they do next? Fox, time for breakfast. Qin Sheng, who had already made breakfast, shouted outside. At this moment, Qin Sheng was not as upset as Song Jiqiu. He had drunk too much last night, and he had been in a bad mood. In the end, his body was controlled by his instinct, and he called Song Jiqiu inexplicably and spent the whole night with her inexplicably. Hearing Qin Sheng's call, Song Jiqiu replied casually, and then she walked out of the bedroom with a forced smile. Qin Sheng, who was pouring juice, heard the footsteps and looked up at Song Jiqiu subconsciously. Song Jiqiu, who was wearing white suspender pajamas and bathed in the sunshine, exuded a unique fragrance. Her hair was a little wet and she was barefoot, exposing her long legs, neck, and chest. There was also the strawberry left by Qin Sheng last night on her chest. She was extremely sexy, and any man could not control himself. Qin Sheng's eyes were too direct, and everyone could feel the male desire in them. Song Jiqiu snorted coldly, and Qin Sheng withdrew his eyes in a hurry and said, "Come here quickly." Song Jiqiu flirted and said, "If you want to look at me, just look at me openly. Don't be sneaky and wretched." "I saw you last night," Qin Sheng retorted casually. Song Jiqiu was worried about what had happened yesterday and did not know how to face Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng's words made her blush even more. However, she still pretended to be indifferent. Song Jiqiu and Qin Sheng walked past each other. They lowered their heads and ate their breakfast in silence. Qin Sheng's breakfast was very simple, consisting of fried eggs, bread, a fruit platter, and orange juice. Due to the craziness last night, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Finally, Qin Sheng could not help but ask about last night. Song Jiqiu stopped this topic in a hurry and said seriously, "Let's stop talking about it. It's all in the past. Let's treat it as if nothing had happened." At this moment, she finally had the imposing manner of the eldest lady of the Song family. As a matter of fact, Qin Sheng was definitely going to meet Song Jiqiu. However, he did not intend to meet her so early. It also did not occur to him that his relationship with Song Jiqiu would develop so fast. What had happened last night had also disrupted Qin Sheng's plan. As a result, he did not know how he should develop his relationship with Song Jiqiu in the future. Many things would be quite awkward. Qin Sheng let out a sigh. Right now, he was like a stray dog living under someone else's roof. Originally, he had come to Tsingtao to ask for Song Jiqiu's help. At this moment, he was even less confident in his words. He wanted to take revenge. He wanted to go back to Hangzhou and Shanghai. Consequently, he had to make a name for himself in Tsingtao. Song Jiqiu raised her head and saw that Qin Sheng was a little depressed. She could not help but ask, "When did you come to Tsingtao?" Qin Sheng raised his head and said with a smile, "I arrived at noon yesterday. Are you here for a vacation or a business trip?" Song Jiqiu asked tentatively. She wanted to figure out Qin Sheng's purpose. She did not like this kind of feeling at all. Her life rhythm was disturbed by the person she liked all of a sudden, which made her calm heart messed up again. Qin Shing smiled bitterly and shook his head as he said, "Neither. Now I am homeless and alone. Consequently, I chose to come to Tsingtao. I wonder if Miss Song can take me in?" Song Jiqiu did not believe what Qin Shing had said. She sneered as she said, "Do you think I will believe that? Qin Shing, can you be a lonely person? To say the least, I have done my best not to kill you. Do you think I will take you in? Even if I don't kill you, do you think the Song family will let you go?" Qin Shing sighed as he said, "I apologize to you for what happened in the past." Song Jiqiu chuckled as she said, "I don't accept your apology. Consequently, after this meal, you'd better disappear before I change my mind. Don't let me see you again." Qin Shing drank up the remaining orange juice in the glass and said carelessly, "I don't think you will be so heartless. Even if the Song family wants to kill me, you will definitely protect me." Song Jiqiu glared at Qin Shing as she said, "You are really thick-skinned. You can have a try." She admitted that she had fallen in love and acted impulsively last night. However, she knew that it was impossible for her and Qin Shing to be together. Not to mention that she would not go back to him, even if she was willing to. She could not imagine how great the resistance from her family would be. After all, the Song family hated Qin Shing because of what had happened. Moreover, Qin Shing had made the Song family lose that piece of ancient jade. As expected, things had developed in an unpredictable direction. Qin Shing really regretted what he had done last night. To be exact, he had been too self-righteous. After all, he had offended the Song family and Song Jiqiu so much. First, he had run away on the night before the engagement ceremony, which made the Song family and Song Jiqiu lose so much face. After all, she was the eldest lady of the Song family. The engagement ceremony had attracted the attention of many people. In the end, there was no leading actor, which was a big joke. Later, the Song family had gone through a lot to get the ancient jade of the Zhang family. However, Qin Shing had taken it away and been chased by the Song family. Today, he had come to Tsingtao again, which was a naked challenge to the bottom line of the Song family. Song Jiqiu did not kill him or tell the Song family, which was really good to him. Now that Song Jiqiu had said so, Qin Shing, as a man, could not kneel down and beg her without any backbone. If he did so, what he had experienced in the past few days, including Gu Qingyang's death, would not be worth it. Does Song Jia still want a son-in-law? If not, I can try again. Anyway, it did not matter to Qin Shing. He continued to challenge Song Jiqiu's bottom line. Hearing Qin Shing's unscrupulous words, Song Jiqiu resisted the urge to turn against him. She stood up with a gloomy face and said, "I will give you half an hour to leave. Otherwise, you will be responsible for the consequences." After saying that, Song Jiqiu did not want to see Qin Shing anymore. She walked directly to the bedroom. Qin Shing stood up and grabbed Song Jiqiu's arm. Song Jiqiu, who was not prepared, was directly held in his arms. At this moment, their posture was quite ambiguous. Song Jiqiu was ashamed and annoyed. "Are you going to turn against me like this? Could it be that I did not serve you well last night? Why don't you try again?" Qin Shing said shamelessly. This time, Song Jiqiu was really angry. She stared at Qin Shing and said, "Rogue, if you dare to do that, I will pretend that I was bitten by a dog. But I will castrate you myself." Qin Shing felt that he had gone too far this time. He also felt bored. He sighed, let go of Song Jiqiu, and said, "I am sorry. I was just kidding." Qin Shing walked slowly to the French window. The weather outside was so good that his mood was swept away yesterday's gloominess. Since he could not stay in Tsingtao, he could choose to go to other places. He did not want to stay here and upset Song Jiqiu. No matter where he went and what he did, his goal would not change, because he would not let Gu Qingyang die in vain. Qin Shing's sudden loneliness made Song Jiqiu feel somewhat uncomfortable. Qin Shing said with his back to Song Jiqiu, "I was frivolous when I was young, and sometimes I could not control myself. I apologize to you again for the harm I did to you. No matter whether you accept it or not, I will say sorry again and thank you for what you have done for me. It's just that I did not have the luck to enjoy them. To be honest, I came to Tsingtao with the intention of seeking shelter from you, because I really have nowhere to go now. But now I have decided to leave. The world is so big, and there is always a place for me to stay. Many things have happened recently, and I am in a bad mood. If you still regard me as your friend, if you want, you can accompany me to Tsingtao for a few days. After I leave Tsingtao, we will never meet again. Qin Sheng's change was a little sudden. Song Jiqiu felt somewhat confused and at a loss. She did not know why she felt sorry for Qin Sheng, but she did not dare to believe him completely. Okay. Song Jiqiu hesitated for a while and finally nodded. She did not want Qin Sheng to disturb her life, but she did not want to be so heartless. After all, she used to like Qin Sheng. In this case, she would accompany him to Tsingtao for a few days, and then she would not disturb him anymore. Qin Sheng said with satisfaction, "I want to go to the seaside." Half an hour later, Qin Sheng and Song Jiqiu walked out of the deep blue center. Although the deep blue center was close to the seaside, Song Jiqiu did not want others to see Qin Sheng, so she drove out of the underground garage. The eldest lady of the Song family's car was a low-key Mercedes-Benz Smart. Why? Because the eldest lady of the Song family's parking skills were not good. Usually, the chauffeur picked her up and sent her to school. She seldom drove by herself. When the two of them walked out, Zhuangzhou and Nangong, who were guarding outside the door, hurried to catch up with them. Nangong said with some hidden bitterness, "I thought they would stay together for a whole day. I really don't know how to describe our young master. Has he completely fallen?" Zhuangzhou found it funny and said, "Why do I feel that you are jealous?" "I am jealous? Why would I be jealous? I just can't stand it," Nangong retorted in a hurry. Zhuangzhou did not say anything. He did not care about these things. Qin Sheng had disappeared for more than 2 days. The group of people in Hangzhou still could not find him. In the end, they had no choice but to announce that the task had failed completely. However, someone had to take the blame. After Chu Xikong and Feng He returned to Hangzhou, Chang Baji also followed them back to Hangzhou. However, he did not contact the previous group of people. Instead, he hid in the market quietly and followed Gu Xiaobo in secret. Finally, he knew Gu Qingyang's ending. Although he felt quite upset about it, he did not let his anger get to his head. Based on his current strength, he might not be a match for Gu Xiaobo. If he wanted to kill Gu Xiaobo, he had to recover first. Chapter 336. Give up and compromise. In the living room of the villa, there were no outsiders except for the people involved in this operation. Hulan, Li Qingfeng, and Luo Changgong represented 3 different forces, plus Gu Xiaobo, the traitor. You all know what happened and the result. Tell me, how should we explain it? Where did we go wrong? As the person in charge of this operation, Hulan spoke first. He had already reported it to Second Master Yen and was reprimanded as expected. But it was not so serious. After all, Qin Sheng was nothing in Second Master Yan's eyes. Feng He said bluntly, "I think someone leaked the information. Otherwise, he would not have escaped so easily." "Who do you think it was?" Li Qingfeng asked with interest. Meanwhile, he glanced at Luo Changgong, who was most likely to be the traitor. He was happy to see Luo Changgong being defeated. Of course, Feng He would not speculate. He said casually, "I don't know." Luo Changgong knew who they were targeting, but he did not get involved in the rest of the things, except for telling Yang Deng a few words. He left Qin Sheng to his fate. Who knew that Qin Sheng was so lucky? Consequently, he chuckled and said, "I know what you mean. I'm not afraid of a crooked shadow. You can take your time to investigate it. If I, Luo Changgong, really leaked the information, you can do whatever you want to me. But..." Luo Changgong pointed at Gu Xiaobo, who betrayed him, and snorted. This person used to be Qin Shing's trusted subordinate. You made him betray you so easily. Don't you think there is something wrong? Of course, Gu Xiaobo did not dare to talk back in front of these tycoons. But Feng He was still on Gu Xiaobo's side. He said in a low voice, "If it were not for Gu Xiaobo, we would not have set up a trap. So Gu Xiaobo is definitely not a problem. There are two main points this time. First, why did Qin Shing suddenly leave Hangzhou in advance? Second, in the protective forest, Chang Baji was seriously injured by Mr. Chu and Gu Qingyang was killed by us. Then who killed our people and let Qin Shing escape smoothly? Based on Qin Shing's strength, it is impossible for him to escape so fast." Mr. Chu checked the body. The opponent was definitely several times stronger than our people. Luo Changgong pounded the table hard and stood up. "Then you think it was me? I didn't even King know that you found a traitor. I didn't even touch my phone that night. How could I have tipped you off?" Li Qingfeng chuckled and said, "We don't know about that. Boss Luo, you are very resourceful. Who knows what you did?" Luo Changgong said furiously, "Li Qingfeng, don't be so weird. If you have the guts, just say it. I will play with you." He did not take these people seriously at all. Li Qingfeng sneered and said, "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Hulan felt that this matter should be left unsettled in the end. This group of people were not ordinary people. Even if someone took the blame in the end, so what? At most, the three families would fall out with each other. However, the fact that Qin Shing had escaped could not be changed. Therefore, it was better not to hurt the harmony. Let's see how the big shots behind us would deal with this. Alright, stop arguing. Let's leave it at that for now. How can a small fry like him have such extraordinary abilities? We will continue to send people to chase after him. There will be news eventually. We can't decide other things. Hulan made the final decision in the end. Hulan and Feng He would go back to Shanghai the next day. There was no need for them to stay in Hangzhou anymore. Gu Xiaobo would also leave with his girlfriend. He did not dare to stay in Shanghai, especially when he knew that Chu Sikong had let Chang Baji go, which made him quite worried. When Luo Changgong got in the car after walking out of the Cici villa, he said disdainfully, "A group of idiots. They even let him escape. It seems that Qin Shing is not destined to die. There must be a force behind him. I made the right decision." On the way home, Luo Changgong reported the situation to Third Master Wu again. Third Master Wu told him that he did not need to worry about this matter. Anyway, Qin Shing did not have many grievances with him. As for the cooperation with the Yen family, let nature take its course. When Luo Changgong returned to the villa, he first asked his subordinates to let Yang Deng out. During this period, Yang Deng had been locked up here. Third Master Wu was afraid that he would intervene in Qin Shing's matter, which would not end well. When Luo Changgong saw Yang Deng, he said straightforwardly, "Yang Deng, Qin Shing's matter is over. The old master said that you are free now." "Is he dead?" Yang Deng stopped and asked with a sigh. He had already expected this result. It was impossible for Qin Shing to escape from the encirclement of the three forces. What else could he do? He could only accept it calmly. It was a pity. He had been suffering these days. Qin Shing was his brother. Third Master Wu was his foster father. Now his foster father wanted to kill his brother for his own interest. Moreover, he put him under house arrest and did not let him help him. How was he feeling? Of course, he knew why the old master did that. In the old master's dictionary, there was no such thing as a real brother. There were only real interests. When the interests were big enough, anyone could be abandoned. Luo Changgong burst out laughing. Yang Deng did not understand why Luo Changgong was laughing. He stared at Luo Changgong in confusion. Luo Changgong explained, "Everyone thought that he would die. Everyone thought that in such a situation, everyone would definitely die. However, it is so amazing that Qin Shing escaped under everyone's nose. Do you think this guy is lucky? We haven't found any trace of him until now. It is really strange. After hearing that, Yang Deng was directly dumbfounded. This result was really unbelievable. Qin Shing actually escaped? Then, Luo Changgong repeated the whole process of this action to Yang Deng. Yang Deng's eyes widened. He did not expect that it would be so dangerous. Gu Xiaobo betrayed him, Gu Qingyang died in the battle, and Chang Baji was seriously injured. Qin Shing had paid such a heavy price to escape. He had to admit that it was also luck. Yang Deng said thoughtfully, "Now it seems that we have to thank Brother Luo for your help. Without you, Qin Shing might have died in Hangzhou." There were no other people in the living room. Luo Changgong had asked them to leave, so it was convenient for them to talk. Luo Changgong replied, "I don't have much ambition for Shanghai. Even if I don't go there, I can still live a good life in Hangzhou. If I go there, I don't know how much trouble I will get into. So whether Qin Shing is dead or not, it has nothing to do with me. However, after all, we are friends with Qin Shing. Qin Shing is also a good young man. Of course, I hope he can live and go further. So I can't bear to see him die. Fortunately, you spread the news. Otherwise, he would have died." Yang Deng smiled sincerely and said, "Brother Luo, I believe that Qin Shing will come back to Hangzhou sooner or later. He will definitely take revenge." Luo Changgong sighed and said, "Yang Deng, don't be so optimistic. I just want him to live. I don't want him to take revenge." Revenge? It's easier said than done. What kind of opponent will he face? He is a young man. Even if he works hard for his whole life, he may not be able to stand at such a high position. He just needs to live well. Yang Deng did not say anything. What Brother Luo said was not unreasonable. But he believed that Qin Shing would definitely come back. But he did not know when. "Brother Luo, who do you think is helping Qin Shing behind the scenes?" Thinking of what Luo Changgong said, Yang Deng frowned and asked, "Shui Qinyan? Chowda? Or someone else?" "God knows." Luo Changgong shook his head and said, "In the Purple Garden Villa in Xishan, Shanghai, Yan Chaozong was called over by the old master to have lunch today. The old master liked peace and quiet. On normal days, unless there was something important, the juniors seldom disturbed him. Even those old friends would call in advance to make appointments. The old master's favorite life was to clean those precious cameras when he had nothing to do. Then he would sit on the lawn, bask in the warm winter sun, and fall asleep. The lunch was very simple. Except for a meat dish that was not too greasy, the rest were all vegetables. Yan Chaozong sat on the right side of his grandfather, which was suitable for the old master to pick food for him. The old master ate the vegetables and asked casually, "You know the result?" Yan Chaozong nodded. The old master then asked, "You still can't let it go? Grandpa, you don't believe me." Yan Chaozong smiled bitterly. He had never had any enemies in his life. Qin Shing was the first one. Now it had nothing to do with Lin Su. He had let go of Lin Su, but he could not let go of Qin Shing. If Qin Shing did not die, he would really feel uneasy. The old master sighed and said, "You and your father really have the same temperament. Both of you are not like me. Let this matter go. Don't think too much and do your job well. I will ask your second uncle to continue the investigation. If he is smart and is lucky to be alive, he will hide his identity. If he is as stubborn as you, he will be easily found out. The Yen family will not give him a chance." "I will listen to Grandpa," Yan Chaozong replied anxiously. He was very clear that although his grandfather said this in a calm tone, he was obviously very dissatisfied with him. If he was really stubborn about this matter, he might even be stripped of his right to be the successor. The old master nodded silently, then changed the topic and said, "Go to Beijing at the end of the month. Your granduncle wants to introduce a girl to you. This girl's family is comparable to our Yen family. If you feel good about her, then get along with her. If you don't like her, then tell your granduncle directly. You can decide by then. Okay, I got it. Yan Chaozong did not resist. He still understood what his grandfather meant. The girl was recommended by his granduncle, so her family was definitely not simple. It would definitely be beneficial to the Yan family. However, he did not know about other things. If he was smart, he would marry this girl, so that he could further strengthen the Yan family's position. If it was in the past, Yan Chaozong would definitely not be willing. However, since the incident with Lin Su, his view on love had changed. This could be seen from the fact that he kept changing girlfriends. Therefore, it did not matter who he married. He would marry a girl who was useful to him and the Yan family. Chapter 337. Trouble. In China, the provincial capital was the economic, political, and cultural center of a province. However, in some provinces, the provincial capital was overshadowed by other cities, such as Tsingtao and Jinan in Shandong, Xiamen and Fuzhou in Fujian, Shenyang and Dalian in Liaoning, etc., who were better than the provincial capital in terms of economy and culture and became dazzling stars. Jinan suffered the most. In the past 2 years, not only had Tsingtao overshadowed it economically, but also Yantai had surpassed it. The reason why Tsingtao's economy was the best in Shandong was that it was a natural port city near the sea. Of course, its economy was developed. Secondly, Tsingtao had always been a famous historical and cultural city in modern history. Of course, it was also an economic center. At the seaside of the music square, Song Zhiqiu walked with Qin Shing at a moderate pace. Qin Shing's clothes were bought randomly in Zhejiang. They looked a bit sloppy and thin. After all, it was much colder in the north than in the south. Fortunately, the weather was good today. Song Zhiqiu, who was next to Qin Shing, looked like a mature model. She was wearing a V-neck sweater and a gray windbreaker, a Hermes scarf around her neck, high-heeled boots, and a pair of tight jeans. Perhaps because the sun was too dazzling, she was also wearing a pair of big sunglasses. She was totally different from Qin Shing, who was next to her. The comfortable sunshine made people feel a little lazy. Qin Shing and Song Zhiqiu might have reached a tacit understanding, so they didn't oppose each other. Therefore, the atmosphere was relatively harmonious. This was the downtown area of Tsingtao. Not far away was the Olympic Sailing Center, a landmark of Tsingtao. There were many tourists and citizens here and there. Song Zhiqiu suddenly thought of this and asked casually, "Last year, someone suddenly sent me a message, saying that the ancient jade of our Song family was in the Tao Temple in Qinghai. Was it you?" Qin Shing answered honestly, "Yes, it was in Hangzhou. I met the Zhang family by chance, so I had to make a deal with them. They helped me do something, and I told them where the ancient jade was. Later, I thought that if they really got it, the Song family would definitely hate me. So I sent you a message." Song Zhiqiu laughed at herself and said, "I'm surprised that you still remember my phone number." Qin Shing shrugged and said, "Have you forgotten that I have a photographic memory? Otherwise, how could I have called you last night?" Song Zhiqiu said disapprovingly, "I actually hope that you will forget it. In this way we will not meet again, and you will not disturb my life." She did not feel very honored. Qin Shing did not dwell on this topic. Instead, he asked, "What was the final result? Between you and the Zhang family, who got the ancient jade?" Song Zhiqiu stared at Qin Shing disdainfully as she said, "We were a little late. In the end, the Zhang family got ahead of us. If our family knew that you were in Tsingtao, I don't need to say more about the consequences. I guess that you would not be able to leave Tsingtao. If her family knew that she was entangled with Qin Shing, she would definitely be scolded to death." Qin Shing laughed and said, "Don't worry. I will leave in 2 days." "Where are you going?" Song Zhiqiu didn't want to care about Qin Shing's business anymore, but she still asked out of the blue. He wanted to go to Hong Kong to look for Jiang Xianbang first. When Zhuang Zhou had given him this identity, He had asked him to apply for the corresponding passport and Hong Kong and Macau travel permit in Xiamen. During this period, he had experienced so much. It was time for him to settle down again. Now he was a little impatient and anxious, which was not a good sign. Uncle Jiang had experienced so many storms and waves, so he could give him a lot of life advice. In this way, he could start the next road and not be too confused. However, he was confused about one thing. So far, he had not contacted Uncle Zhuang. He did not know where he was and what he was doing. This was unexpected. Qin Xing answered truthfully, Hong Kong. Song Jiqiu frowned and asked, Hong Kong? Do you have friends in Hong Kong? Qin Xing nodded and replied, there is an elder there. He should be able to help me a lot. Song Jiqiu sighed and asked, what on earth have you experienced in the past 2 years? I feel that you have suffered a lot of setbacks and grievances. You are not like this in the past. You seem to be a different person. Qin Xing said, after leaving Shandong, I went to many places. At that time, I didn't have any ideas. I just wanted to walk around. Later, I went back to Shanghai and stayed there for several months. Then I offended someone and almost lost my life. I recuperated in Xiamen for half a year. After I recovered, I went to Hangzhou. I had been in Hangzhou for several months. Originally, I had a firm foothold. Just a few days ago, I was driven out of Hangzhou again. At that time, I wanted to go to Wuhan. However, the news was leaked and I was betrayed by a trusted friend. I couldn't go to Wuhan anymore. So I had to choose Tsingtao. After hearing this, Song Jiqiu said, it's really complicated. Qin Xing laughed at himself and said, let's not talk about this. Maybe this is my fate. I am destined to drift for the first half of my life. I don't know when I can settle down. Song Jiqiu squinted and said, maybe you want too much, so you have to pay more than others. Qin Xing sighed with emotion as he said, maybe. When I can't move anymore, I might be able to settle down. Then, he embraced the blue sky and white clouds with both hands. After taking a deep breath, he said, Tsingtao is really a good place. Let me take a good look around. I don't know when I can come here again, but I will definitely not look for you again. His words made Song Jiqiu feel inexplicably sad. However, she did not say anything. It was destined that they would miss each other. Their presumptuous behavior last night put an end to this relationship. Qin Xing had his way to go, so did she. Maybe they were really not the same kind of people. During the whole day, Song Jiqiu accompanied Qin Xing to wander around nearby. In the end, she booked a new hotel for Qin Xing, which was the westin behind the deep blue center. In this way, it would be more convenient for them to go out. Of course, she would not let Qin Xing stay in the deep blue center again. It was already very risky yesterday. If it was seen by others, first of all, it would be bad for her reputation. Second, it would put Qin Xing in danger. Besides, what had happened between them last night, of course, they could not continue like this. In the evening, Song Jiqiu took Qin Xing to a seafood restaurant in Badagwan. She knew that Qin Xing liked seafood, and the seafood in this restaurant was very authentic. So she took Qin Xing there. In the next 3 days, Song Jiqiu put aside all her work and social activities and accompanied Qin Xing to wander around Tsingtao. This was the only thing she could do for Qin Xing. Although she did not put aside what had happened before, Qin Xing's current state was obviously not right. As Qin Xing's friend and a woman who used to like Qin Xing, she naturally hoped that Qin Xing could be better. So she not only took Qin Xing to all the scenic spots in the downtown area, including Laozhan and Huangdao, but Qin Xing could not stop praising the Laozhan green tea. She also borrowed her friend's yacht and took Qin Xing out to sea once. Qin Xing would leave Tsingtao tomorrow. He had already bought a plane ticket to Shenzhen. Tonight could be regarded as his last dinner. As Qin Xing said, after this farewell, he did not know when they would meet again. Even if they met, they would probably pretend not to know each other. Food stalls by the sea were Qin Xing's favorite. It was also a place where Song Jiqiu had taken Qin Shing to before. Beer, seafood, and barbecue. Song Jiqiu was familiar with Qin Shing's temperament. She knew that he did not like those high-end restaurants. He only liked this kind of food stalls that were down to earth. Of course, they could only do it indoors in this season. If they did it outdoors, they would have been frozen to death. Seafood and barbecue were all over the table. Qin Shing and Song Jiqiu held the beer mugs. The authentic Tsingtao beer tasted absolutely good. Song Jiqiu picked up the mug and said, "I wish you no more ups and downs in your life. The road ahead is bright and sunny. I also wish you can find a confidant as soon as possible. You don't have to travel all over the world as your home." "Thank you." Qin Shing thanked her sincerely. In the corner, Zhuangzhou and Nangong lowered their heads and ate seafood. They went wherever Qin Shing and Song Jiqiu went these days. It could be regarded as a public tour. They liked Tsingtao a little. "I have booked the plane ticket. You will take the same flight with Qin Shing tomorrow. I will take another flight later. I have booked a first-class ticket for you. You will board the plane at the last minute. In this way, you will leave early when you get off the plane. You will not meet each other." Zhuangzhou stared at Qin Shing, who was not far away, and arranged the arrangement for Nangong in a low voice. Nangong sighed and said with hidden bitterness, "It's really troublesome. We just arrived in Tsingtao. Now we have to go to Shenzhen and then Hong Kong. When will it end? I don't know. Let's wait for Beijing's arrangement." Zhuangzhou smiled bitterly. Nangong stared at Qin Shing and said, "When he returns to Beijing, he must compensate me for what I have done. Otherwise, I will definitely not spare him." "That depends on your ability." Zhuangzhou smiled and said. In number 8 Liang Road, Song Jiqiu was not willing to live in the building developed by the Song family. However, the other members of the Song family were quite willing to live there. After all, the Song family was a luxury house manufacturer in Tsingtao. Living in the luxury house of the Song family, they did not need to pay for it. Song Jianing, Song Jiqiu's cousin, lived here. Except for the elders, he was the one who loved Song Jiqiu the most in the Song family. After Qin Shing ran away on the night before the engagement party, he led some people to chase after Qin Shing for nearly 2 months. If he had not been so busy with work, he would not have stopped until he caught Qin Shing. In the direct line of the Song family, Song Jianing was the eldest grandson, and Song Jiqiu was the eldest granddaughter. Consequently, they had a very good relationship. These days, Song Jianing had been on a business trip in Shanghai. He had just come back today. Every time he went on a business trip, he would bring Song Jiqiu gifts and invite her to dinner. Today was the same. Unexpectedly, when he called Song Jiqiu, she said that she had something to do and was having dinner with her friends. In this way, Song Jianing felt that something was wrong. Before this, the company's assistant had told him that Song Jiqiu had not come to work in the company for 4 days. This was not Song Jiqiu's character. In addition, Song Jianing's friend had said that he had seen Song Jiqiu go out to sea with a strange man on a yacht. Originally, Song Jianing had planned to ask Song Jiqiu when he saw her. Unexpectedly, he did not see her today. Song Jianing had to think more. Could it be that his sister was in love? Consequently, Song Jianing called Xiaolu, Song Jiqiu's driver. After the phone was connected, he said on purpose, "Xiaolu, where is Jiqiu? Why can't I get through to her?" "Well," Xiaolu said hesitantly. Song Jianing followed up and asked, "I already know something. It depends on whether you are willing to tell me. If you want to continue working in the Song family, you should tell me the truth. Otherwise, you can leave tomorrow." "Which man has Jiqiu been with these days?" Song Jianing was totally talking nonsense, but he hit the nail on the head. Xiaolu, the driver, had a guilty conscience. Hearing young Master Song's words, he was so scared that he had to tell him everything. After hearing Xiaoyou's words, Song Jianing's expression changed instantly. He hung up the phone directly and went straight to the place where Song Jiqiu and Qin Shing had dinner. Chapter 338. Chapter 337. Take him down. Song Jianing was 3 years older than Song Jiqiu. They got along well with each other. Song Jianing had been taking care of Song Jiqiu since they were little, especially when they were studying abroad. They had studied in the UK from high school to college. Song Jiqiu finished her undergraduate studies in Cambridge and then returned home, because she didn't like living abroad and her mother was not in good health at that time. Song Jianing studied at the Imperial Institute of Technology and then went to the London Business School for his MBA. Therefore, during those years in the UK, they depended on each other and took care of each other, so they had a deep relationship. As for what had happened 2 years ago, most of the people in the Song family had not supported it. Only Song Jianing had stood by Song Jiqiu's side firmly. He had hoped that Song Jiqiu's Mr. Right would be a son of a noble family with a well-matched family background. In this way, Song Jiqiu could have a better position in the family. Moreover, he had heard too many stories about unmarried men. However, love was unpredictable. After all, Song Jiqiu liked it. If they tried to stop her, she would be hurt more and feel resentful. In this way, she would live a tiring life. After all, only when they liked each other could they be happy in love. Therefore, Song Jianing supported Song Jiqiu in the end. He had a good impression of Qin Shing in all aspects, including his style of talking, temperament, and his way of dealing with people. Therefore, he was optimistic about this relationship more or less. However, he didn't expect that so many things would happen later. Qin Shing abandoned Song Jiqiu on the night before the engagement party, which made Song Jiqiu a joke in the whole Song family. Song Jiqiu was such a proud woman. The fact that she had chosen Qin Shing had already surprised many people. However, in the end, she had been abandoned by Qin Shing. Song Jianing really wanted to ask Qin Shing, "What makes you so confident?" Song Jianing knew better than anyone else how Song Jiqiu spent that time. Qin Shing hurt his sister, who he cared about the most, so he hated Qin Shing more than anyone else. Therefore, he led some people to kill Qin Shing in person. Unfortunately, he died in vain. Now, this man showed up in Tsingtao again and dared to harass his sister. Of course, Song Jianing couldn't bear it. Although he didn't see Qin Shing in person, he had guessed it from the driver Xiaolu. Apart from Qin Shing, who else could make his sister take him so seriously? After all, in the past 2 years, he had never seen a man walk into his sister's world. Now that Qin Shing was here, of course, Song Jianing would not let him leave Tsingtao alive. Neither would he allow him to harm his sister. Moreover, he had other scores to settle with the Song family. Song Jianing came to the seafood stall with 2 bodyguards. At the same time, he called his family to ask for help. He knew that Qin Shing was very good at fighting, so he had to find someone who was as good as Qin Shing. Otherwise, this guy would run away again. Over the past 2 years, the group of people from the Song clan who had chased after Qin Shing had suffered a lot. In the seafood stall, Qin Shing did not know that Song Jianing had already known that he was in Tsingtao. He also did not know that Song Jianing was on his way here with some people. If he had known that, Qin Shing would have run away. After getting along with Qin Shing for a few days, the relationship between Song Jiqiu and Qin Shing was not as stiff as when they first met. After all, they used to have a relationship. They could not be lovers, but they could still be friends. The most pitiful thing in a relationship was that the former lover became the enemy. Qin Shing had to thank Song Jiqiu, because he had met Song Jiqiu, who did not hate him to the core. If it had been another woman, it would have been different. They drank several glasses of beer. Song Jiqiu was a little drunk. She looked at Qin Shing with a complicated expression. She still couldn't figure out what kind of person Qin Shing was. Maybe she had been a little stupid at that time. She wanted to be engaged to a man whom she had known for only 2 months. She must have scared Qin Shing. Why are you staring at me? Qin Shing felt that Song Jiqiu's expression was strange, so he said with a smile. Song Jiqiu lowered her head and said with a faint smile, I really don't know what kind of woman can subdue you. I haven't asked you these days. Except for your first love in high school, have you had any other women in the past 2 years? Qin Shing was stunned subconsciously. Song Jiqiu, his ex-girlfriend, asked him this kind of question. How should he answer? If he told the truth, Song Jiqiu might be jealous and then change her mind. If he lied, it was not Qin Shing's style. After all, he did not want to deceive the kind-hearted Song Jiqiu. Qin Shing said thoughtfully, I know the answer. Of course, Song Jiqiu knew what was going on, so she said with a bitter smile. Qin Shing said thoughtfully, in fact, she is quite like you. It's a pity that I made her suffer a lot. A man like me deserves to be single in this life. Whoever is with me will suffer. Song Jiqiu said with a hidden bitterness, sometimes, I really don't understand what men are thinking. Women like us simply like each other. As long as we like each other, it's enough. However, you have to think too much. In fact, we don't care about these things at all. Qin Shing said with a bitter smile, maybe this is the difference between men and women. Life is not that simple. Love is not enough. You can ignore it, but we can't let you suffer with us. So we have to do a lot of things. Song Jiqiu was a little depressed. After all, any woman would feel bad when she heard that her ex had a new lover. So she said quietly, I hope you can treat her better. I hope she will not be the second me. I also hope she can take care of you. I hope you can be happy. Qin Shing did not know what to say after hearing Song Jiqiu's words. Although he said that he would not forgive her, he knew that Song Jiqiu had let go of that thing after a few days. He also knew that Song Jiqiu loved him deeply. Otherwise, that thing would not have happened that night and she would not have accompanied him to relax these days. Therefore, when Song Jiqiu said these words, she must feel very sad. The silent atmosphere was the most awkward. Qin Shing changed the topic in a hurry and said, What about you? Have you been in a relationship in the past 2 years? Song Jiqiu stared at Qin Shing and smiled disdainfully. She shook her head and said, No. I have been hurt once. I am very cautious about love. Moreover, I am not like someone who can easily get over the previous relationship and quickly start a new one. Qin Shing had intended to change the topic, but he did not expect that he would dig a pit for himself again. This pit was not as shallow as the previous one. Qin Shing was speechless again. He could only pick up the wine glass and said, Let's drink. Let's drink. Song Jiqiu was amused by Qin Shing's embarrassment. She covered her mouth and smiled. I am just teasing you. After drinking up the last wine in the glass, Qin Shing felt that it was almost time. They were all full, so he stood up and went to pay the bill. When he came back, Song Jiqiu had put on her clothes and was waiting for him. They walked out of the seafood stall side by side. It was a little cold at night, so Song Jiqiu wrapped her coat tightly. The driver, Xiaolu, was waiting for them outside. After all, they had all drunk, so they did not drive today. Song Jiqiu stopped and looked at Qin Shing as she said, I will not see you off tomorrow. After all, I have been behind a lot of work these days. I wish you all the best. When you arrive in Hong Kong, send me a message and tell me. Qin Shing nodded and said, Okay. Then he asked subconsciously, Will we meet again? Song Jiqiu resisted her inner impulse and refused. It is not necessary. I don't know when we will meet again. I guess we will forget each other at that time. It is meaningless to see each other. Qin Shing did not urge her to stay. He chuckled and said, Okay, then let's forget each other in Jianghu. Thank you for meeting me in my life. Thank you for accompanying me these days. I hope you will find your Mr. Right soon. Thank you. Song Jiqiu forced herself to smile. Then she sighed and said, Let's go. I will take you back to the hotel. This should be the last part of the journey with you. Okay. After that, they were ready to go to the parking lot, where the driver, Xiaolu, was waiting for them. They did not notice that in a dark corner at the entrance of the hotel, Song Jianing, who had arrived long ago, saw everything. Song Jianing clenched his fists and was full of killing intent. To be honest, although he had guessed that it might be Qin Sheng, he really did not want it to be him. If it were someone else, he might be happy for Song Jiqiu. But it was Qin Sheng. Therefore, Song Jianing was very angry. Song Jianing walked out from the corner slowly and said in an unfriendly tone, "Since you have come to Tsingtao, why don't you say hello to me, your old friend?" At this time, there were only Qin Sheng and Song Jiqiu at the entrance of the hotel. Therefore, Song Jianing's voice was very harsh. Everyone could hear it. Hearing this voice, Song Jiqiu's face instantly turned pale because she was so familiar with her cousin Song Jianing's voice. After all, they had known each other for so many years and met each other often. Song Jiqiu turned around subconsciously. At this time, Song Jianing had walked under the light. No one could see his face clearly. Song Jiqiu was at a loss. She shouted absent-mindedly, "Brother?" Song Jiqiu did not expect that her cousin Song Jianing would show up here. Everyone knew that he came for Qin Sheng. But how did he know that Qin Sheng had come to Tsingtao? Could it be the driver Xiaolu? She tried her best to hide it from the other members of the Song family. Once they knew, Qin Sheng would not be able to leave. Therefore, at this moment, Song Jiqiu was desperate because she knew that she was doomed. Qin Sheng also heard this sentence. The meaning of this sentence could not be more obvious. Qin Sheng could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. Could it be that the Song family knew that he had come to Tsingtao? When he turned around and looked at the source of the voice, he found that it was indeed Song Jianing, an old acquaintance of the Song family. Qin Sheng could not help but sigh. It seemed that he could not leave in a short time. Therefore, Qin Sheng had accepted his fate. He smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Ning, long time no see. How dare you call me Brother Ning? Qin Sheng, I did not expect that you would dare to come to Tsingtao and harass my sister. You really do not take the Song family seriously. Well, I will let you know what the price is." Song Jianing stared at Qin Sheng and said while gnashing his teeth. Qin Sheng wanted to refute. "Brother Ning, Song Jianing did not want to hear what Qin Sheng wanted to say at all. He shouted directly, "Take him down." Chapter 339. Chapter 338 finally decided. Since Song Jianing knew that Qin Sheng had come to Tsingtao, he would not let Qin Sheng leave so easily. He needed an explanation for what had happened before. Otherwise, he would not be able to take it lying down. This matter was out of Song Jiqiu's control. From now on, Song Jianing would be in charge of it. The Song family hated Qin Sheng's gut. Consequently, after receiving Song Jianing's call, they sent so many people here in no time. It did not occur to Song Jiqiu that things would go out of control. She did not know what to do. She could not let her cousin take Qin Sheng away. If that happened, the elders in the family would definitely let Qin Sheng go. Song Jiqiu begged, "Brother, don't do this. Let him go. I've let go of the past." When Song Jianing learned that Song Jiqiu and Qin Sheng had been together these days, he knew that his disappointing sister had been fooled by this scumbag again. Otherwise, she would have called him long ago. How could she still hang out with Qin Sheng? Song Jianing said with a tough attitude, "Jiqiu, it's not about you now. It's about him and the Song family. I can let you do whatever you want, but this is impossible. I've already told my family that I will take this bastard back today no matter what." Song Jiqiu did not give up. She continued to say, "Brother, I beg you. After all, I used to like him. If you take him back, my family will definitely not spare him. He is no longer the Qin Sheng in the past. Jiqiu, you're still pleading for him at this moment. I really don't know what to say. You let me down. He doesn't deserve this," Song Jianing said with disappointment. The noise outside was so loud that all the customers inside had heard it. The waiters at the door did not dare to get involved. They were so scared that they retreated into the food stall. Many people were watching the scene outside through the window. Some were even thinking about whether they should call the police or not. When Song Jiqiu and Qin Xing paid the bill and walked out, Zhuangzhou and Nangong were ready to follow them out. Unexpectedly, such a thing happened suddenly. Nangong looked at Zhuangzhou and said, "Uncle Zhuang, what should we do? Should we take action? Let's see what's going on first, and then we can make plans. Otherwise, once we take action, we may expose our identities." "The Song family is not like others," Zhuangzhou said after careful consideration. Nangong nodded silently. She felt that what Uncle Zhuang said was reasonable, but she was very puzzled. Why was this young master so unlucky? Wherever he went, people would find trouble with him. Sure enough, there was always a price to pay for being a playboy. Outside, Song Jiqiu found that Song Jianing refused to budge no matter how hard she begged. She said somewhat angrily, "Song Jianing, do you have to take him away today? Fine, if you want to take him away, you'll have to do it over my body first." After that, Song Jiqiu stood in front of Qin Xing to protect him, which made Song Jianing even angrier. He shouted at Qin Xing, "Qin Xing, don't you feel ashamed? You once hurt her so deeply, and today, she still wants to protect you. Are you a king man or not? If you are, then stand up for me." Song Jianing then ordered, "Guards, take the eldest lady away." Song Jianing's 2 bodyguards stood up immediately and said to Song Jiqiu, "Eldest lady, I'm sorry." After that, the 2 men were about to take action. At this time, Qin Xing, who had been silent, finally said, "Brother Ning, don't make things difficult for Jiqiu. I'll go with you." After hearing that, Song Jianing sneered and said, "Okay, you said it." Song Jiqiu turned around and stared at Qin Xing in disbelief. She said, "Qin Xing, don't." Qin Xing patted Song Jiqiu's shoulder and said somewhat guiltily, "Jiqiu, Brother Ning is right. I don't deserve you to do these things. Besides, some things should be settled eventually. After all, I owe you. Believe me, nothing will happen." Song Jianing did not want to see Qin Xing and his sister talking anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Take him away." Several men rushed over without hesitation. They took Qin Xing directly into the car and left with Song Jianing. Song Jianing did not pay attention to Song Jiqiu anymore. He was afraid that Song Jiqiu would continue to plead for Qin Xing, which would put him in a difficult position. After all, he did not want to see his sister in pain. After Song Jianing and the others left with Qin Xing, Song Jiqiu was still in a daze. She did not understand what had happened. However, she would not let the Song family hurt Qin Xing. She could only beg the seniors in her family to let Qin Xing go. After making up her mind, Song Jiqiu called the driver, Xiaolu, and left in a car to find the seniors in her family. It was not until a few minutes later that the farce came to an end. Zhuangzhou and Nangong walked out of the food stall slowly. Looking at Song Jiqiu's back, Nangong said, "It seems that our plane tickets can be refunded. We can't go to Hong Kong anymore." Zhuangzhou squinted and replied, "It's a little complicated. It's out of our control. We just need to follow them. As for other things, I'll call Beijing and see what they're going to do." Nangong nodded and said, "Okay." Since the relationship between the Qin family and the Song family was a little complicated, they could not act recklessly. They had to listen to the arrangement of their foster father. Late at night, in a private club at the foot of the Great Wall, Qin Chang'an had a business meeting with several friends. After Gongsun received Zhuangzhou's call, he had to ask the manager to invite Qin Chang'an out. Gongsun was quite clear about the rules of this dinner party. After Qin Chang'an came out, he frowned and said, "What's wrong? Did that guy get into trouble again?" Gongsun did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You even guessed it. What happened recently that made you so anxious? Tell me, what happened? Qin Chang'an sighed and said. Gongsun said honestly, young master has been in Tsingtao recently. He has a relationship with a girl from the Song family in Shandong. However, I don't know what the Song family did to him before. The Song family directly kidnapped young master. Zhuangzhou and Nangong did not know what to do, so they called to ask. After Qin Chang'an heard that, he frowned and said, The Song family in Shandong? How did this guy get into trouble with the Song family in Shandong again? He was quite familiar with the Song family in Shandong, because he had a good relationship with the whole family. The Song family in Beijing and the Qin family were old friends, especially the two old masters, who were close friends. That was why there was a child betrothal. The Song family in Shandong was a branch of the Song family in Beijing, which had been developing well these years. They had a lot of business contacts with the Qin family, so they were all old acquaintances. Qin Chang'an was not worried at all. He only needed to make a phone call. However, he had other ideas. Gongsun shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Maybe it's something in the past. Qin Chang'an pondered for a while, and felt that this was a good opportunity. It was time for him to put an end to this matter. Otherwise, he would make everyone angry. As a result, he ordered directly, in this case, go to Tsingtao with Qin Ran. She has been waiting for this day for many years. It's time for her to get what she wants. Hearing this, Gongsun instantly understood what was going on. It was because Qin Chang'an had finally decided to reconcile with Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng could finally go back to the Qin family, and did not have to live a homeless life being bullied by others anymore. Gongsun looked at Qin Chang'an in surprise. After a long time, he came to his senses and said, Okay. I'll arrange it right now. You can also arrange other things, by the way. I'll wait for you in Beijing. Qin Chang'an said calmly, as if this matter did not affect him much and was just a trivial matter. However, was it really like this? Qin Ran was Qin Sheng's sister, and he was Qin Sheng's father. They had been separated from each other for so many years. Didn't he miss them? However, he restrained his emotions. Even if he really met Qin Sheng, he would still be like this. In a meeting room of a company in the World Trade CBD, Qin Ran was still having a meeting with a group of senior executives. After receiving Gongsun's call, Qin Ran immediately stood up and went out to answer the call. Usually, she would not answer anyone's call during a meeting. She would even hang up on Qin Chang'an's call directly. However, Qin Ran would answer Uncle Gongsun's call at any time. Outside the meeting room, Qin Ran smiled and said, Uncle Gongsun, it's so late. What's the matter? Ran, your father asked me to accompany you to Tsingtao. He agreed. Gongsun did not tell her what had happened to Qin Sheng in Tsingtao. It was not important. As long as he got to the point, it would not be too late to talk about the rest on the way to Tsingtao. Upon hearing this, Qin Ran was directly stunned. After a few seconds, she could not hold back the excitement in her heart anymore. She directly threw the phone away and screamed unscrupulously. They were finally going to recognize each other. What could make her more excited than this? Everyone in the meeting room thought that something had happened. They ran out in a hurry, including the staff in the office area who were working overtime. They saw Qin Ran standing in the corridor, dancing excitedly, laughing and crying at the same time. This was the first time that everyone had seen Qin Ran lose her composure like this. Qin Ran finally felt that something was wrong. She looked up and saw that the corridor was already full of people. Everyone was staring at her in disbelief. It was not until then that she calmed down in a hurry and ordered immediately, What are you doing? Don't you work anymore? Lu Wen, you continue to preside over the meeting. I have something else to do, so I have to leave now. I will be away for a few days. Cancel all the arrangements in these 2 days. We will talk about it when I come back. Lu Wen was Qin Ran's assistant. She was still wondering what on earth had happened to Qin Ran and what made her act like this. Hearing Qin Ran's words, she came to herself and said, "Oh, I got it, President Qin." Qin Ran went back to her office to pack up her things. Then she left the company immediately and went to meet Uncle Gongsun without any delay. The others were still confused and could not figure it out. Was President Qin going to get married? In Tsingtao, Qin Shing did not know what had happened in Beijing, nor did he know that his life was about to change. From then on, there would be a world of difference. Probably no one would have thought of it. After all, such a life of ups and downs was too dramatic. At this moment, he was taken to the villa in Liuyang No. 8 by Song Jianing. He was quite depressed. He had escaped the joint pursuit of the Yan family, the Chu family, and Third Master Wu. But in the end, he had been captured by the Song family. He had even sent himself to their door. It seemed that it was a wrong decision to come to Tsingtao from Zhejiang. However, since he could not go to Wuhan, Tsingtao seemed to be the only choice. Seeking wealth amidst danger, he took the risk to come here. Consequently, he could not blame anyone. In the villa, Song Jianing sat on the sofa and smoked. He looked at Qin Shing, who was standing not far away from him. Qin Shing had been tied up with a few bodyguards standing next to him. Because Song Jianing knew Qin Shing's fighting skills well, he was afraid that this guy would run away again. Song Jianing squinted and said, "Qin Shing, you also have this day. You didn't expect it, did you?" Qin Shing, who was completely disheartened, smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Ning, what do you want? I admit it." Chapter 340. Pain of Flesh. This was No. 8 Liuyang Road. Not to mention the security in such a luxurious villa area, the ubiquitous surveillance cameras were enough to make people flinch. Moreover, there were many bodyguards of the Song family in Song Jianing's villa. Consequently, it was not easy for Zhuang Zhou and Nangong to get in easily. The two finally got into the community, but they could only look for opportunities outside Song Jianing's villa. At this time, they received a call from Gongsun. After answering the phone, Zhuang Zhou frowned and said to Nangong, who was beside him, "Gongsun and Qin Ran are already on their way to Tsingtao." He looked thoughtful. Apparently, he had already guessed the reason. That was, Qin Chang'an finally chose to reconcile with Qin Shing. Qin Shing was going back to Beijing. Otherwise, why would Gongsun accompany Qin Ran to Tsingtao? Nangong was a smart woman. She immediately understood and said, "Are they going to reconcile?" "Yes, it should be." Zhuang Zhou did not deny it. Nangong did not feel happy for Qin Shing or the Qin family. Instead, she said happily, "This exhausting task is finally over. I'm going to the Maldives to rest for half a month." Zhuang Zhou directly ignored Nangong. This girl was quite playful. He did not know how Qin Chang'an had tamed this girl. "Then what should we do now? Wait for them or take action first?" After feeling happy, Nangong faced the current problem directly. At least this was their task now. If something happened before the handover, it would be terrible. Zhuang Zhou said thoughtfully, "Gongsun told us not to act rashly. We just need to keep an eye on them and wait for them to arrive. The Song family won't do anything to Qin Shing in a short time." "What if he suffers physical pain?" Nangong asked with interest. Zhuang Zhou shrugged and said, "I only know not to act rashly." Nangong laughed in a very unladylike way. It was time to let this young master suffer. He had slept with the eldest lady of the Song family. He could not blame the Song family for making trouble for him. While Qin Shing was suffering inside, these two big brothers and big sisters, who were protecting Qin Shing, were making sarcastic remarks outside. If Qin Shing knew about this, he would probably have the intention to kill them. After all, he was the young master of the Qin family. Song Jianing could not wait to kill Qin Shing right away. However, it was against the law to kill someone. After all, he had taken Qin Shing away in broad daylight. Even if he really wanted to kill Qin Shing, he needed the consent of the elders in his family. He would not do such a stupid thing. Otherwise, it would be a stain on his life. Moreover, he had to worry about Song Jichio's feelings. Otherwise, the brother-sister relationship would change in the future. However, it was still possible for him to teach Qin Shing a lesson. For example, he could ask the bodyguards to beat Qin Shing up. No one would say anything. Therefore, Song Jianing said, "Beat them up." The two bodyguards took action without any hesitation. The one on the left controlled Qin Shing, while the one on the right directly punched Qin Shing's abdomen. Qin Shing instantly revealed a pained expression. Anyone would not be able to take 2 punches from such bodyguards when they were defenseless. However, he did not have any complaint. After all, he had once owed them a debt. Today, it was not too much for them to collect some interest. If it had been him, he might have been more unscrupulous. The 2 bodyguards also knew that they should not hit people in the face. They only aimed at Qin Shing's abdomen and back. After a while, Qin Shing was beaten to the ground. When had Qin Shing ever been wronged like this? However, he admitted defeat today. After all, he had offended the Song family so much. In fact, the reason why Qin Shing admitted defeat was that he felt guilty about Song Jichio. He had hurt Song Jichio so deeply. However, Song Jichio did not hold it against him. These days, she put down everything and accompanied him to relax, which made his mood and state recover a lot. Moreover, at the last moment, Song Jichio did not hesitate to stand in front of him to protect him. If a man had a little conscience, he should feel ashamed at this moment. As he said, he was not worthy of Song Jichio doing so many things for him. How could he pay her back? Therefore, in the end, Qin Shing did not want Song Jichio to break with the Song family. Therefore, he surrendered without putting up a fight. Seeing Qin Shing lying on the ground in pain, Song Jianing could not help feeling much better. He walked slowly to Qin Shing, squatted down, and said, "How do you feel? Do you regret it?" Qin Shing grimaced in pain. A lot of sweat appeared on his forehead. However, he still insisted. "I'm sorry for the Song family and Jichio. As long as you are happy, Brother Ning." Song Jianing snorted. "You are still as stubborn as before." After that, Song Jianing stood up and kicked Qin Shing's abdomen again. Then he scolded, "I don't understand. What's so good about you that Jichio likes you? I don't understand why you, Qin Shing, are so confident that you abandoned Jichio after she chose you? Is your family rich and powerful? Or are you a playboy? Do you know what it means for Jichio to choose you? It means that you, a beast, can struggle for 50 years less? This is a great opportunity for the Qin family. Many people have been yearning for it. How could you not cherish it? Are you regretting it now? That's why you came back to harass Jichio? Qin Shing, don't worry. I can tolerate Jichio making a mistake once, but I won't let her make a second mistake." Judging from Jichio's attitude today, Song Jianing knew that Jichio still couldn't forget Qin Shing. Otherwise, how could she treat Qin Shing, who had not contacted for 2 years, suddenly appear in Tsingtao? Therefore, he had to give up this possibility. If he could stand, he would never sit. If he could sit, he would never lie down. A man should straighten his back. Even if he had to die, he should die like a man. Consequently, Qin Shing struggled to get up. He did not want to lie on the ground and be trampled on. He endured the pain and replied, "Brother Ning, there are some things that I don't want to explain. You can say whatever you want. Now that I'm in the hands of the Song family, no matter what you do, I'll admit it. I owe the Song family." The tougher Qin Shing's attitude was, the more uncomfortable Song Jianing was. He gnashed his teeth with hatred. He wanted to break Qin Shing's bones and make Qin Shing beg for mercy in front of him. In this way, Song Jichio could see Qin Shing's most spineless side. In that way, Song Jichio would be completely disappointed in Qin Shing and let go of this ill-fated relationship. "I don't believe that you won't admit your mistake today. Keep beating them. Song Jianing was angry and ordered again. After the two bodyguards heard the order, they did not care about anything else. They only needed to do things according to the rules. They could also exercise their muscles and bones. However, the poor man did not know how he had offended Song Jianing. When the two bodyguards were about to beat Qin Sheng, Song Jiqiu finally arrived and shouted, "Stop!" Song Jiqiu, who had been in a mess, was going to find her eldest uncle. Since her eldest uncle lived in Tsingtao and her father was still in Jinan, only her eldest uncle could persuade Song Jianing. However, on the way, she realized that Song Jianing would definitely not let Qin Sheng have an easy time. Only when she was by Qin Sheng's side could she protect him. Consequently, Song Jiqiu had to rush back to number 8 on Liang Road. Meanwhile, she called her eldest uncle and her father and begged for mercy. Finally, she persuaded them. Qin Sheng's escape from the wedding had caused a great disturbance, so the seniors of the Song family had a strong opinion of him. Now that Qin Sheng had been caught, the seniors of the Song family would definitely seek an explanation. Everyone, including Song Jianing, turned around subconsciously and looked at Song Jiqiu, who was panting and looking pale. Song Jianing said angrily, "Jiqiu, are you still going to be stubborn? Is it worth it for this man? Do you want to be the enemy of the entire Song family?" Qin Sheng was tied up and looked terrible. Song Jiqiu knew that he had suffered a lot. She somewhat regretted that she had not followed him here. As she walked, she said, "Song Jianing, it's not your turn to make decisions in the Song family." Song Jiqiu rarely talked to Song Jianing in such a tone, except when they quarreled fiercely. However, most of the time, Song Jianing would admit defeat. After all, Song Jiqiu was his younger sister. However, today, Song Jiqiu had confronted him again and again for a man who did not share the same surname, which made Song Jianing very unhappy. After all, this man had hurt her and offended the Song family. Song Jianing could not swallow his anger. "Even if I can't make decisions, I will always be on the side of the Song family. Jiqiu, are you really going to protect this man?" Song Jianing said word by word. No matter what happened today, he would not allow Song Jiqiu to act recklessly. Song Jiqiu nodded without hesitation and said, "Yes. Without our family's permission, you can't hurt him." Song Jianing's attitude became tougher and he said bluntly, "If I really want to hurt him today, you won't recognize me as your brother, will you?" Song Jiqiu was speechless. She did not know how to answer for a while because it was a difficult choice. "Brother Ning, don't make things difficult for me. Whatever you want to do, I will be with you." Qin Sheng did not want to make things difficult for Song Jiqiu. She had done so many things for him. The more she did so, the more he owed her. At this time, Song Jianing did not want to hear any sound from Qin Sheng, the initiator of all this, because all this was caused by Qin Sheng. So he was almost unable to restrain his anger. He used all his strength and punched Qin Sheng's chest hard without any warning, venting the resentment in his heart and roaring, "It's not your turn to speak here." Song Jianing's punch was so fierce that Qin Sheng did not expect it at all. He bent down in an instant and felt a piercing pain in his chest. If the two bodyguards had not supported him, he would have knelt on the ground. This scene made Song Jiqiu anxious. She shouted, "Enough, Song Jianing." After saying that, Song Jiqiu ran to Qin Sheng in a hurry. She held Qin Sheng and asked in a hurry, Qin Sheng, how are you feeling?" "I'm sorry. It's all my fault." The more Song Jiqiu cared about Qin Sheng, the more resentful Song Jianing was. He directly ordered, "Pull the eldest lady away." Several bodyguards stepped forward and were about to pull Song Jiqiu away. However, Song Jiqiu replied, "Who dares to touch me?" The bodyguards were in a dilemma. Song Jianing stared at Song Jiqiu and was very angry. The atmosphere was a bit tense. The brother and sister fought with each other again for Qin Sheng. At this moment, Song Jianing's cell phone rang. He took out his cell phone and saw that it was a call from the old master. He could not help but feel happy. He walked to the side in a hurry to answer the phone. As long as the old master supported him, he could do whatever he wanted. However, after answering the phone, Song Jianning's face did not look good. The old master told him to stop and wait until Song Jiqiu's father, who was the second uncle, came from Jinan tomorrow. The elders of the Song family would discuss how to deal with Qin Shing. Song Jianning was quite disappointed because the old master said that he could not do anything to Qin Shing today. Moreover, Song Jiqiu would stop him. Chapter 341. The night before, it's a new month. I'm looking for monthly votes. I want to write more this month. It was his father who called Song Jianning. After the old master passed away, Song Jianning's father was in charge of the Song family. His second uncle was in Jinan, and his third uncle was in Tianjin. They were both doing business. Both of her aunts-in-laws were from influential families, so both of her uncles were involved in politics. Coupled with the influence of the Song family in Beijing, the Song family in Shandong had quite a lot of influence in northern China, not to mention that they were an established family. Therefore, Song Jianning did not dare to disobey his father. Otherwise, he would be punished. There had been precedents. Therefore, he could only lock Qin Shing up and wait for his father and second uncle's decision tomorrow. The two bodyguards helped Qin Shing into the guest room. Song Jiqiu had intended to follow them, but she was stopped by Song Jianning. Of course, he would not let Song Jiqiu be alone with Qin Shing. Who knew what would happen? At this time, Song Jianning asked all the bodyguards to leave, leaving only him and Song Jiqiu. He asked Song Jiqiu to sit on the sofa. No matter how angry Song Jianning was, he could not do anything to his sister. Therefore, he calmed himself down and tried to reason with Song Jiqiu. After pouring a glass of water for Song Jiqiu, Song Jianning sat opposite her and said, "Jiqiu, why did you do this? I did it for your own good. Can't you let him go? I don't understand. What's so good about him? 2 years have passed. He doesn't deserve you. You should start your own life and start afresh." Song Jiqiu drank some water and calmed herself down. Then she explained seriously, "Brother, if you really do it for my own good, let him go. A lot of things are not what you think they are. I've made it clear with him. This time he came to Tsingtao to relax and apologize to me. He had his reasons for what happened in the past. I've forgiven him. We are not enemies, nor will we be friends. He will leave Tsingtao tomorrow. From then on, we will have nothing to do with each other." After hearing Song Jiqiu's explanation, Song Jianning was somewhat relieved. At least Song Jiqiu and Qin Shing were not what he had thought. However, he did not intend to let Qin Shing go. Since it was now, he still had to settle the scores in the past. That piece of ancient jade was finally obtained by the Zhang family. The old master was still thinking about it before he passed away. The Song family would not let it go so easily. "Is what you said true?" Song Jianning still didn't believe it. Of course, Song Jiqiu would not tell him the truth. If she had really let go of Qin Shing, she would not have fallen in love with him that night, and she would not have had sex with him. She would only reveal her true feelings after drinking. After she got drunk, she even danced when she got home. It was obvious how she was feeling at that time. But when she woke up the next day, reality was reality. She was no longer the girl who could disregard her own safety for love. She had matured a long time ago, and would no longer fall in love with anyone. As for the past with Qin Shing, she would pretend that nothing had happened and let everything go with the wind. Song Jiqiu smiled bitterly and said, "How could I lie to you about this kind of thing?" No matter what Song Jiqiu said, Song Jianning would not let Qin Shing off. However, he had to consider the relationship between him and Song Jiqiu. He did not want to fall out with her because of a scumbag. Consequently, he said on purpose, why didn't you tell me earlier? You didn't give me a chance at all. Song Jiqiu believed him stupidly and said, Brother, can you let him off now? Song Jianing pretended to be embarrassed and said, It's a bit difficult now. Jiqiu, you know, my father already knows. Your father will come tomorrow morning. If I let him go, do you know the consequences? Song Jiqiu had wanted to say that she would take care of everything, but she gave up in the end. She knew her eldest uncle's temper, and he would definitely not blame her. However, Song Jianing would not be able to escape. What should we do? Song Jiqiu still believed in Song Jianing because he had always been on her side. In order to spend the night peacefully and not let Song Jiqiu bother about other things, Song Jianing had to settle for the second best. We can only do this. Let him stay here tonight. When the elders arrive tomorrow, we will plead for him together. I think the elders in our family will not make things difficult for him. Song Jiqiu thought for a while and finally agreed. It seemed that this was the only way. Song Jianing advised Song Jiqiu to go back and have a rest first and come back the next morning. Qin Xing had been busy for half a night. However, Song Jiqiu was worried and insisted on staying here. Fortunately, Song Jianing's wife and children were not here tonight. Otherwise, Song Jianing would not have brought Qin Xing here. Outside, after Zhuangzhou and Nangong tried their best, they finally ran to the rooftop of the villa next door and watched the situation inside through the gap of the French window curtains. Fortunately, there was no one living in the villa next door, which gave them such an opportunity. Nangong sighed and said, This woman is really good. She can still protect him at this time. He should know how to cherish her. He shouldn't linger in the bushes of flowers and never return. As a woman, she naturally understood women. She had a high opinion of Song Jiqiu. She admired Song Jiqiu very much both in terms of her physical condition and what she had done today. Zhuangzhou did not care about these things. He looked at the time and said, It's time to go to the airport to pick them up. Leave him alone? It was the first time for Nangong to see such an attitude from Zhuangzhou. Zhuangzhou smiled casually and said, A little pain is nothing to him. You definitely don't know that he is good at martial arts. You can learn from each other when there is a chance. Nothing will happen tonight. Tomorrow is the real show, but it has nothing to do with us. He won't be so embarrassed in the future. Well, it's finally over, Nangong Chang said with a sigh. No one knew whether she meant that her mission was finally over or that Qin Xing's bitter life was coming to an end. Only she would know. In the early morning, Qin Chang'an's Gulfstream G650 landed at Qingdao Luting International Airport. This was the most advanced private plane under the Gulfstream Group, which could fly 13,000 kilometers from Beijing to Los Angeles. Qin Chang'an had changed his bombardier to the Gulfstream G650 the year before last. Most of the time, he took this plane. After all, his identity was special, and he would arrange some special guests. During this period, Qin Chang'an was basically in Beijing. Except for Qin Ran, who used it twice, it was parked at the capital airport, which was managed by the business jet company under Air China. Zhuangzhou drove Nangong to the airport in person to welcome Gongsun and Qin Ran. For this trip to Tsingtao they did not take anyone else with them, only the two of them. After all, this news had to be kept confidential at the moment. Otherwise, it would not be good for both Qin Xing and Qin Chang'an. Although Qin Chang'an did not say anything, Gongsun knew what to do. Zhuangzhou and Nangong were both familiar with Qin Ran and Gongsun, so they were not so strange when they met. After receiving Qin Ran said very politely, Uncle Zhuang, sister, thank you for your hard work during this period. This was not only for her, but also for Qin Chang'an and Qin Xing. Without their protection, Qin Xing might have been in trouble. Zhuangzhou chuckled and said, Ran, we are family. You don't need to be so polite. That's right, sister. Nangong echoed. She was totally different in front of outsiders and in front of the Qin family. She was like a cold killer in front of outsiders, but in front of the Qin family, she was a little girl who could not grow up. Qin Ran said calmly, "Okay. I won't be polite." Zhuang Zhou looked at Gongsun, patted his shoulder and greeted him. "Old guy, you are finally willing to come out." "How could I not come out for such a big thing?" Gongsun laughed out loud. He was very familiar with Zhuang Zhou. They were old friends and had known each other for many years. Nangong was more straightforward. She gave Gongsun a hug without hesitation and said, "Uncle Gongsun, long time no see. I miss you so much. You little girl, you didn't disappoint me this time. I was really afraid that you would quit." Gongsun knew Nangong's character. She had a bad temper, so he really didn't know if she would be able to control her temper to do this kind of thing. Nangong pretended to be unhappy and said, "I don't listen to anyone. How could I not listen to you?" Gongsun smiled and said, "All right, don't show off. Let's get in the car first. It's so cold outside." After they got in the car, Zhuang Zhou drove to the downtown area. Then he talked about the business about Qin Sheng. "Uncle Zhuang, how is my brother now?" Qin Ran said with a worried look. After seeing Uncle Gongsun, she knew why Qin Chang'an finally decided to let her go to Tsingtao to take Qin Sheng home. It turned out that something happened to her brother again. She did not know how he offended the Song family in Shandong and was kidnapped. Qin Ran was somewhat speechless. How could anyone bully him and trample him to death? It was not easy for him to escape from Zheojiang. Now, just as he settled in Tsingtao, he was beaten by the Song family again. How could he be so unlucky? Zhuang Zhou knew that Qin Ran cared about Qin Sheng more than anyone else. Of course, he did not say what should not be said. For example, if Qin Sheng suffered some physical pain, he and Nangong could not care about it, but Qin Ran definitely would. Zhuang Zhou said honestly, "Qin Sheng is fine now. He is in the villa of Song Jianing, the eldest young master of the Song family, in number 8 Liang Road. Qin Sheng's friend, the eldest lady of the Song family, Song Jiqiu, is by his side. Nothing serious will happen to him." Qin Ran frowned and said, "What does the Song family want to do?" Qin Sheng should have some grievances with the Song family. It seems that he also had emotional disputes with the eldest lady of the Song family, Song Jiqiu. That's why the Song family made such a big move. Now it seems that they will deal with it tomorrow. Zhuang Zhou continued. These were all his guesses. After all, he had been following Qin Sheng these days. She did not know these things, but it did not matter. She only cared about her brother. So she said, "Well, thank you, Uncle Zhuang. I got it." Zhuang Zhou asked, "Shall we go there now?" Qin Ran did want to go there now, but obviously it would be too noisy. So she replied, "Forget it. Since we have nothing to do tonight, let's go back to the hotel and have a rest. It's very late now. We will go there tomorrow morning." Gongsun nodded silently. Qin Ran was not impulsive. She knew how to deal with things. This was also in line with Zhuang Zhou's expectation. So he said with a smile, "Okay, let's go back to the hotel first. The hotel is not far from number 8 Liang Road. We can go there earlier tomorrow." Half an hour later, they arrived at the hotel. They did not say anything and checked in directly. Chapter 342. From now on, this chapter has been updated for a long time, but I didn't want to foreshadow it, or I would be scolded to death by you. So I wrote it directly. This chapter has more than 6,000 words. I haven't written such a long chapter for a long time. I'm exhausted. So, you can vote for me. Coastal cities rarely had haze in winter, unlike inland cities, especially cities with poor geographical environment. Every winter was like the end of the world. So in winter, coastal cities in the south, especially those in Hainan, were the busiest time of the year. Some people even jokingly called Sanya the Sanya Special Administrative Region of the 3 provinces in the northeast. However, rich people could go to the south to spend the winter, while ordinary people could only continue to breathe in the haze. In addition, the gap between the rich and the poor was widening, and some contradictions became more and more prominent. As a coastal city in the north, Tsingtao was a little cold in winter, but at least there was no haze. This was already a blessing. If the weather was better, it would be more comfortable, like these days. It was a new day. When the sun rose from the sea level, most people knew that today was a good day, similar to the previous days. For most people, today was no different from any other day. But for some people, today was destined to be an unforgettable day in their lives. Some people got married today, some became parents today, some broke up today, some lost their loved ones today, and so on. For Qin Ran, today she would achieve what she had dreamed about countless times in the past 20 years. She would not have to suffer in the future. As for Qin Sheng, today was only a little different, because he was still a prisoner, waiting to see how the Song family would deal with him. But he did not know that today would be a watershed in his life. From now on, he would be totally different. After taking a shower, Qin Ran changed her clothes and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the sea in the distance. Such weather was rare in winter in Beijing. She did not know whether it was because of the good weather or because she was going to meet her brother, but she was in a very good mood. In front of the floor-to-ceiling window, Qin Ran slowly drifted off. She was thinking about many things, such as the scene of meeting Qin Sheng later, how he would react, and what they would say. She thought that after returning to Beijing, she must take Qin Sheng back to the old house first, so that he could recall those things when he was young. She also wanted to take him to visit her mother's grave, and then take him to meet his grandmother and uncle. It was not until the phone rang that Qin Ran came back to her senses. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. She was too anxious. Everything had to be done slowly. The premise was that Qin Sheng had to accept this fact and identity first. Ran, we are already waiting for you in the lobby, Gongsun said softly. He was more excited than usual today. As long as Qin Sheng went back to the Qin family, Qin Ran would definitely come back to live with him. In the future, the Sihiyuan would be lively and would not be so deserted anymore. A few minutes later, Qin Ran came downstairs and met Nangong Gongsun in the hall. Zhuang Zhou had already gone to the parking lot to drive the car. Today, only the four of them would go to the Song family. After seeing Qin Ran, Nangong said sincerely, "Sister, you are so beautiful today." To her, today was no different than usual. However, she knew what it meant to Qin Ran. "Was I not beautiful before?" Qin Ran said with a faint smile. She had dressed up meticulously today, and looked at herself in the mirror over and over again. Maybe she was too excited, or maybe she wanted to let Qin Sheng see the most beautiful side of her sister. Nangong immediately held Qin Ran's arm and said intimately, "No way. You have always been beautiful, but today you are even more beautiful. If I didn't know better, I would think that you are going on a date. Today is more important than a date." Gongsun, who was beside her, teased her with a smile. Even if it was a date, Qin Ran would not take it seriously. Moreover, she never went on a date. Except for her best friends, she seldom met with men. Many young and talented men in Siju City pursued her, and in the end, they all became her friends. Nangong covered her mouth and giggled. She did not dare to tease Qin Ran like this. Only Uncle Gongsun had the qualifications to do so. At this time, Zhuang Zhou had already driven the car to the gate. Qin Ran, Gongsun, and Nangong walked out of the hotel. After getting in the car, they headed for number 8 on Liang Road. It was already 9 o'clock at this time. Song Jiqiu's father, Song Ryu, was on his way to number 8 on Liang Road. This name was given by Song Jiqiu's grandfather, which simply meant that a gentleman was as gentle as jade. Song Ryu had indeed become such a man. In the entire Song family in Shandong, he was the best. His character was different from Song Jianning's father, Song Hongtu. In addition to the superficial meaning of the name, Song Hongtu mainly meant that he had 1,000 years of hegemony, and he would cut off 1,000 feet with a sharp blade in his hand. After all, Song Hongtu was the first son of the old master. At that time, the Song family was already in a precarious situation. Therefore, the old master gave his first son such a domineering name, hoping that he could protect the foundation of the Song family and create a better future. When it came to the second son, the old master's mood was different. He hoped that he could become a gentleman and act with integrity. As for the third son, it was even simpler. His name was Song Yisher. He had 2 elder brothers to shoulder everything for him, so he should enjoy his life and not live a tiring life. Therefore, he lived a romantic life. It was unknown whether it was fate or the old master's ability to predict the future. In the end, the 3 sons all lived like their names. Therefore, a big family with a profound background was different. It was full of culture. If they were not cultured, they could only be given names like Gooden and Huzi. Song Ruyu and the others set off from Jinan before 6 o'clock. Because Song Ruyu had a regular schedule, he basically went to bed at 10 o'clock every night. Even if he had social engagements, he would not go past 11 o'clock. He would get up at 5:30 the next morning, exercise, eat breakfast, and start a new day. Song Jianning's father, Song Hongtu, went to pick up Song Ruyu in person. The 2 brothers had a good relationship. Even after the death of the old master, they strictly followed his will and did not have any conflicts over the inheritance. In the end, they set up a family trust fund with part of the money to support outstanding young people in the collateral family. The rest of the money was used for charity. Most importantly, they did not dare to act recklessly. After all, there was an uncle in Siju City. If they dared to ruin the reputation of the Song family, the uncle would not be kind to them. On the way to number 8 Liang Road, Song Hongtu and Song Ruyu sat in the back of a Bentley and chatted casually. Song Hongtu had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a beard. He had a strong aura. Song Ruyu was gentle and elegant. Wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, she looked kind and approachable. Both of them were standard burly men from Shandong, who were more than 1.8 meters tall. As a result, their children were not short. Song Jianning was 1.85 meters tall and Song Jiqiu was 1.7 meters tall. Therefore, family genes were very important. Song Hongtu said casually, "Since you are in Tsingtao this time, you should stay for a few more days. Some old friends want to have a good gathering." He basically lived in Tsingtao now, while Song Ruyu had always been in Jinan. Song Ruyu shook his head and said, "If it were not for Jiqiu's matter, I would not have come to Tsingtao. Recently, there are many things to deal with in Jinan. At the end of the year, I still need to visit some people. The old master just passed away this year, so this year is a little special." Song Hongtu understood what Song Ruyu meant. "You are right. I will go back to Jinan at the end of next month. At that time, I will also visit some places. I can't let you take care of these things." Although the old master had taken care of them in Beijing, many things had changed since the old master had passed away this year. It was better to pay more attention to them. Song Ruyu nodded. The 2 brothers would discuss a lot of things. Neither of them would do things their own way. His brother would still ask for his opinion on many things. Song Hongtu frowned and asked, "Then how do you plan to deal with this matter?" Song Hongtu asked with a frown. Actually, it had already been 2 years since that incident. He had long forgotten about Qin Sheng. The only thing that he could remember was that piece of ancient jade. However, that was something that the old master could not forget. The older generation would only fight for that bit of pride, while the younger generation did not care much about it. Song Ruyu was a broad-minded person. He frowned and said, "To be honest, I just want to know why he ran away from the marriage. As long as Jiqiu can let it go, I have no opinion. We can't really kill him, so we'd better not get involved in this kind of thing." As for the ancient jade, I have no opinion on how you deal with it. Song Hongtu, who was not so broad-minded, said bluntly, the ancient jade, the old master died with hatred. This guy has to take the main responsibility. At that time we already got it, but in the end, he took it away. Also, the Song family has been chasing after it for so long and suffered so much. We can't let it go. Song Ryu waved his hand and said, Okay, then we will talk about it when we see him later. He came to Tsingtao for 2 reasons. One was to deal with Qin Shing, and the other was to have a good talk with his daughter. She was not young anymore, so the family could only listen to him. 10 minutes later, Song Hongtu's Bentley stopped at the door of Song Jianning's villa. Song Jiqiu and Song Jianning were already waiting at the door. Song Jianning was as obedient as a grandson in front of his father. He got along well with his uncle, Song Ryu. Sometimes when he had conflicts with the old master, his uncle could persuade him in the end. As for Song Jiqiu, she was the apple of the Song family's eye. It could be seen that when she wanted to be engaged to Qin Shing, the Song family had agreed so easily. What an open-minded family it was. Qin Shing should really thank the gods for the help of the Lin family. After greeting his father, Song Jianning said with a smile, Second uncle, why have you put on weight recently? Song Ryu replied in a low voice, Recently, I have been busy. I haven't exercised for a long time, so I'm a little fat. Your second mother nags me every day. Don't mention it or my daughter will stare at me. Song Jiqiu held Song Ryu's arm and said bitterly, Father, am I such an insensible daughter? Song Hongtu didn't have a daughter, so he treated Song Jiqiu as his biological daughter. Although the little girl from his third brother's family had just entered high school this year, she was also very favored. After all, he and his 2 younger sisters all had 2 sons. It was undeniable that the Song family was relatively prosperous. Song Hongtu smiled happily and said, Jiqiu, your father is complaining about you not returning to Jinan. Don't fall into his trap. I can't bear to see you leave. Song Ryu said half-jokingly, She is my daughter. How can you occupy her? If you have the ability, go and have a baby. Song Hongtu laughed and said, Look, he is anxious. After joking for a while, they went back to the villa. Song Jianning's wife and children were not there, so it was relatively quiet in the villa. After they came in, the atmosphere was not as casual as before. Instantly, it became somewhat depressing. Song Hongtu asked directly, Where is he? Song Jianning replied, Upstairs. Song Hongtu waved his hand and said, Bring him down. Song Jianning immediately winked at the bodyguards, and the 2 bodyguards went upstairs to bring Qin Shing down. Song Jiqiu took the opportunity to say, Father, eldest uncle, I've let go of the past and forgiven him. So don't make things difficult for him. This time, Song Hongtu didn't care about Song Jiqiu, who was spoiled. Instead, he said seriously, Jiqiu, don't say anything about what happened today. Your father and I will decide how to deal with it. It has nothing to do with you. Eldest uncle. Song Jiqiu felt the pressure. Song Jianning immediately held her and whispered, If we talk about it later, it will only backfire. After a while, Qin Shing was taken downstairs by 2 bodyguards. Compared with last night, Qin Shing's mental state was worse. Last night, he didn't sleep at all. First, he thought about many things, such as reflecting on what had happened during this period, how to get through this crisis, and what he should do next. Second, he didn't dare to sleep. He was really afraid that Song Jianning would put him in a sack and throw him directly into the sea at night. When he went downstairs, he knew that the elders of the Song family had come. The old master of the Song family had passed away, so the elders of the Song family had to be Song Jiqiu's father, eldest uncle, or third uncle. As expected, the eldest brother and the second brother of the Song family were sitting on the sofa, waiting to deal with him. Although Qin Shing was in low spirits, he still greeted them politely. Say hello to Uncle Song. I'm sorry for troubling you again. Song Jianing muttered, damn it. You are still so stubborn. I will make you admit defeat today. Song Hongtu glanced at Song Ryu, who was looking at Qin Shing. Song Hongtu was not very interested in Qin Shing. He just wanted to deal with this matter quickly in case of any more trouble. Qin Shing, when I first met you, I didn't expect that you would be so capable. You made a mess of the Song family. As for the thing between you and Jiqiu, I regret that I agreed with Jiqiu's temper. That's fine. How dare you run away from the marriage? You made the Song family a joke. Besides, do you have a problem with the Song family? It was not easy for us to get the ancient jade. How dare you take it away? Now the Zhang family got it again. Speaking of this, I'm angry. If I don't deal with you today, I won't be able to swallow my anger. Song Hongtu was not very angry, but when he talked about the past, he became more and more angry. Song Ryu was still observing Qin Shing. He was more or less disappointed. In his words, this young man was not as good as he used to be. In the past, he had been a high-spirited young man full of intelligence. Now, he lacked energy, qi, and spirit. He was somewhat mediocre and degenerate, which made him very disappointed. Hearing her eldest uncle's words, Song Jiqiu looked at Song Jianing in a hurry. Last night, she had promised her to plead with the elders. Song Jianing smiled gently and said slowly, Father, you're right. We can't spare this guy. He hurt Jiqiu so badly and made the Song family lose the ancient jade. Now he dares to come to Tsingtao. Obviously, he doesn't take the Song family seriously. Song Jianing's words made Song Jiqiu dumbfounded. She stared at Song Jianing in disbelief. She did not believe that Song Jianing had said that. Didn't he promise her to plead for her? Why did he say such words at this moment? Brother, it's not like this. You promised me last night, Song Jiqiu said with red eyes. She still hoped that Song Jianing could plead for her. At this moment, Song Jianing did not lie to Song Jiqiu anymore. He said honestly, Jiqiu, forgive me for lying to you last night. I can promise you anything, but I can't let you do this. No, don't do this. Song Jiqiu was somewhat on the verge of breaking down. Her eldest uncle's attitude was so tough. Her father definitely would not spare Qin Shing. Now that Song Jianing's attitude was like this, it was impossible for her to turn the situation around by herself. Song Jiqiu cried, which made Qin Shing feel somewhat sorry for her. He comforted her and said, Jiqiu, don't cry. I brought this upon myself. I'll pay off what I owe you and the Song family this time. Qin Shing really had no other way. When he had been in Hangzhou, there had been people who had helped him. He had brothers by his side and benefactors at his back. But now he was in Shandong, and he was in the Song family. The Song family was too powerful. He was alone without any helpers. He could only wait for the punishment without any room to resist. Song Hongtu looked at Song Ryu and asked, Second brother, what do you think? If you don't have any opinion, I'll make the decision. He did not make the decision on his own. Song Ryu adjusted her glasses and said, Qin Shing, I just want an explanation. Why did you run away from the wedding? Song Ryu and Song Jiqiu were really father and daughter. Their questions were exactly the same. However, he did not ask a more ruthless question, because he was afraid that his daughter would be hurt. He would not take such a risk. Qin Shing explained, I didn't have parents since I was a child. My grandfather and I depended on each other. When my grandfather passed away, he told me to walk around the country in the following 2 years and do nothing. If I had been engaged to Jiqiu, I would have been bound by the Song family. So I chose to leave. However, he was not satisfied with this reason. If Qin Shing had said directly that he did not like Jiqiu, he might have believed him. Consequently, Song Ryu directly shook her head and said, I don't believe this reason. Brother, you decide how to deal with it. Dad, don't. Song Jiqiu held Song Ryu's arm and cried. Qin Sheng laughed at himself. He really could not escape this time. Even if the Song family did not kill him, they would cripple him. He was really King unlucky. Hearing that Song Ryu had agreed, Song Hongtu laughed and said, Okay, then at this moment, there was a sudden chaos outside. There were even noises and sounds of fighting, which made the Song family members frown. Song Hongtu asked confusedly, What's going on outside? Song Jianing, who did not know what was going on, immediately arranged for the bodyguards to go out and have a look. This was a critical time to deal with Qin Sheng, so no accidents could happen. Before the bodyguards could take 2 steps forward, the door of the villa was pushed open from the outside. Qin Ran, who was dressed like a queen, walked in slowly, followed by Gongsun. Zhuang Zhou and Nangong, the 2 heaven-class bodyguards, were at the back. Originally, when Qin Ran and the others arrived at the door of the Song family's house, they wanted to report first before going in. However, the bodyguards of the Song family were stubborn and said that there was no one in the villa. They were all arranged by Song Jianing in advance, and did not want to be disturbed by anyone. The bodyguards were just following his instructions. Of course, Qin Ran did not believe it. Since the soft approach did not work, she could only use the hard way. She would explain later. When Qin Ran led the Qin family members into the villa's living room, the first person to open his eyes wide was naturally Qin Sheng. His eyeballs almost popped out, and his mouth was so wide that a durian could almost be stuffed in. He looked like he had seen a ghost, as if he could not believe what was happening in front of him at all. He thought he was dreaming or hallucinating. Of course, he knew the woman who was walking at the front. They had met in Xiamen and Hangzhou. Although they had only met a few times, they had a good chat and had a lot of common topics. However, they did not contact each other after that. However, he could not believe it. He did not dare to believe that this woman, who he had only met a few times, would actually appear in front of him at this time today. This was beyond common sense. It was like if you told others that the universe only had the Milky Way or the solar system now, others would think that you were a fool. However, not only that, there was something even more unbelievable. That was, Zhuang Zhou, whom he had lost contact with for a long time, actually appeared at the same time as this woman. What the hell was going on? Who could tell me what was going on? What exactly happened in this world? Could it be that time and space were in disorder? Qin Sheng did not believe what was happening in front of him at all. He felt that there was something wrong with his mind. Qin Sheng did not believe what was happening in front of him, but the Song family members did. They immediately recognized Qin Ran and Gongsun when they faced the Qin family members. Because the Song family and the Qin family had some business dealings, both Song Hongtu and Song Ryu had seen Gongsun and Qin Ran. Gongsun and Qin Chang'an were like shadows. Qin Ran was in charge of some specific affairs of the company and had dealings with the Song family. Moreover, the Qin family and the Song family in Beijing were old friends. How could they have seen each other before? Qin Ran walked forward slowly and said very politely, Uncle Song, please forgive us for coming uninvited and disturbing you." Song Hongtu was very confused. He did not know what Qin Ran and Gongsun were doing. He subconsciously thought that Qin Sheng's surname was also Qin. Could they be related to Qin Sheng? However, they were very clear about Qin Sheng's background. He had nothing to do with the Qin family in Beijing. Moreover, with the Qin family's status, it was impossible for them to be related to Qin Sheng. However, why did Qin Ran and Gongsun suddenly appear in Tsingtao and directly break into the Song family? With these doubts, Song Hongtu finally spoke on behalf of the Song family. "If I remember correctly, you are Qin Chang'an's daughter, Qin Ran? Our two subordinate companies have business dealings. The last time I saw you was in Beijing. Oh, and Mr. Gongsun, how have you been?" Gongsun only smiled and nodded at the Song family members. Now that Qin Ran represented the Qin family, he was not qualified to speak. Thank you for remembering me, Uncle Song. I said hello to you and Uncle Song on behalf of my father, Qin Ran said naturally. Thinking of the man named Qin Chang'an, Song Hongtu instantly lost his confidence. He was a man he had to look up to. He smiled and said, "How is Master Qin recently? Next time I go to Beijing, I will definitely ask him for a drink. I am afraid that Master Qin will not have time. However, Qin Ran, why are you here today?" "Actually, it is not a big deal. Today I came to visit you to ask for a person. I owe you a favor." Qin Ran went straight to the topic and did not explain too much. Song Hongtu subconsciously said, "Who?" But after he said that, he already knew who Qin Ran wanted. Apart from Qin Xing, he really could not think of anyone who could break the door and ask for a person. However, what was the relationship between Qin Xing and the Qin family in Beijing? Why did Qin Chang'an's daughter and trusted subordinate Gongsun come to Tsingtao personally to ask for a person? Qin Chang'an could totally make a phone call. No matter how big the hatred between them was, they had to hand Qin Xing over obediently. Qin Ran pointed at Qin Xing without hesitation, but she did not look at him. Because she had noticed Qin Xing long ago, but she suppressed the excitement and heartache in her heart and forced herself not to look at him. Because she was afraid that if she saw Qin Xing at this moment, she would directly break down. As expected, Song Hongtu was full of doubts, so were the rest of the Song family. Song Ryu stared at Qin Ran and frowned, wondering what was going on. Song Jianing had not come back to his senses yet. He looked at Qin Ran in a daze. This was a goddess who had once shocked him. He had tried to chase after her, but after knowing her identity, he flinched. He was somewhat excited to see her again today. At this moment, he had already forgotten about Qin Xing. Only Song Jiqiu was extremely happy at this moment because Qin Xing could be saved. Originally, Song Hongtu did not want to ask more, because he was not qualified to say this. But he could not help but say, "Qin Ran, he is the enemy of our Song family. I need an acceptable reason." At this moment, the living room was unusually quiet. Everyone, including the people behind Qin Ran, was waiting for Qin Ran's reason. They all knew that from this moment on, many things would be completely different. Qin Xing was also waiting, because this was the only reason that could solve all his doubts. Qin Ran looked at the people of the Song family and took a deep breath. Then, with her eyes lit up, she said firmly, "He is my biological brother, Qin Chang'an's biological son." Her words were like a needle falling to the ground, clear and melodious, but could directly hit people's hearts. Chapter 343. Who are they? Who am I? Sometimes there were some strange things in life. Things would not develop the way you wanted them to. If you didn't want them to, they would. Often, miracles happened in this way. Many people tried to find out the root of this problem. In the end, they did not know whether it was a psychological problem or a scientific problem. At this moment, this was the case for the Song family. In the living room of the villa, after Qin Ran finished her words, there was a long silence. Except for the Qin family members who had known the truth long ago, the Song family members were so shocked that they could not come back to their senses for a long time. The impossible became possible. This was something they did not dare to think or believe at all. Qin Xing, the young man whose background they had investigated thoroughly, was actually Qin Chang'an's son? How could this be possible? Who was Qin Chang'an? He was the invisible tycoon in Suzhou City, an absolute power figure. Many of his investments both at home and abroad had a red mark. If he was just an ordinary businessman, no one would believe it. Although his wealth was not so shocking, his influence in the political and business circles was unparalleled. He was much more terrifying than those rich people who were often seen on TV and the internet. Most people knew that Qin Chang'an only had one precious daughter. This daughter was the super fair, rich and beautiful woman in front of them. She was the woman that many men dreamed of marrying. But no one knew that Qin Chang'an actually had a son. And this son was this ordinary man with no background, who had offended the Song family several times and was ready to be punished by the Song family. As for Qin Sheng, what had happened today had completely exceeded the scope of what he could bear. A woman whom he had only met a few times but had no contact with had suddenly appeared here to save him. Behind her was the man who had helped him walk through the gates of hell but had completely disappeared recently. Then, this woman told him, an idiot who had been an orphan for more than 20 years, that he was her biological brother and that a man named Qin Chang'an was his biological father. As for who Qin Chang'an was and why the Song family was so afraid of him, he had no time to think about it. Qin Sheng's mind was already broken down. There was no logic at all. He did not know what had happened at all. He just looked at these people in front of him in a daze. He had no idea what their relationship was with him. Who are they? Who am I? This. Song Hongtu was the first to return to his senses. He felt that this was too unbelievable. However, since Qin Ran could stand here with Gongsun, it was obvious that this was the truth. Even if he did not believe it, he had to believe in the Qin clan's ability. If the information was not accurate, why would the Qin clan mobilize so many people? Qin Ran knew that no matter who she told, no one would believe her. However, she knew better than anyone else what had happened. Consequently, she replied, Uncle Song, I know it's hard for you to believe this. But this is the history of the Qin family. It's about my grandfather. Most people don't know about it. Grandfather Song, who lives in Beijing, should know about it. Song Hongtu sighed. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, he also felt lucky. If Qin Ran had not arrived in time today, she would have done something to Qin Sheng, the son of Qin Chang'an. In that case, he would have offended the Qin family greatly. It would be very troublesome to deal with it later. He could not guarantee that his uncle would have to step in. Although Song Ruyu had seen a lot of things, it was the first time for him to experience what had happened today. It was like a scene from a novel. No wonder he felt that Qin Sheng was more intelligent than ordinary people when he first met him. As for what had happened later, it was out of his control. However, now that Qin Sheng had suddenly changed his identity from an ordinary person to Qin Chang'an's son, if his daughter and Qin Sheng could continue their relationship, it would be a good thing for the Song family. However, could Qin Sheng or the Qin family, who had changed his identity, take a fancy to his daughter? This was a big contrast. He did not know what to say, but he could only accept it calmly. As for Song Jianing, he felt like crying at this moment. A second ago, he wanted to kill Qin Sheng. The next second, he wanted to apologize to Qin Sheng. Big brother, you are a great man. Everything is a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart for my sister's sake. In addition, he and his second uncle, Song Ruyu, had similar thoughts. He really hoped that Qin Sheng and Song Jiqiu could start over. In that case, the Song family would have a powerful ally, and he would be Qin Sheng's brother-in-law. In front of outsiders, Song Jiqiu was an extremely smart woman. However, in front of Qin Sheng and her family, she was very simple. Although she knew who Qin Chang'an was, she was only happy for Qin Sheng at this moment. First, Qin Sheng finally did not have to be wronged anymore. The Song family would not target him anymore. Second, Qin Sheng was no longer an orphan. He had a father, a sister, and a family. Song Hongtu did not say anything. He did not know what to say now. The Song family had been slapped in the face. He had no time to care about these things. He needed to take a rest. This news was too shocking for him. Seeing that Song Hongtu did not say anything, Qin Ran did not want to stay in the Song family anymore. So she said directly, Uncle Song, I'm sorry to bother you today. I will take my brother home first. If there is a chance in the future, I will visit you. In addition, I hope you can forgive my brother for offending the Song family in the past. As his sister, I apologize on his behalf. Hearing this, Song Hongtu hurriedly said politely, No, it's just a misunderstanding. It's rare for you and your brother to meet each other. I won't keep you. Let's meet again in the future. Okay. Thank you, Uncle Song, Qin Ran said respectfully. She had been influenced by these principles since she was young. Moreover, she had been in the business world for so many years. She was also a strong woman. How could she not understand these principles? After Qin Ran finished speaking, she looked at Nangong and Zhuang Zhou behind her. They immediately understood what was going on. They quickly walked up to Qin Xing and took him from the hands of the two bodyguards of the Song family, who did not know what had happened. Qin Xing was still in a daze. He had not recovered yet. This was not something that could be understood in a short time. Moreover, he had to accept these facts, so he could only let Nangong and Zhuang Zhou help him to leave. Zhuang Zhou sighed. He felt sorry for Qin Xing. No matter how the Qin family reconciled with Qin Xing, he would eventually have to go through this stage. This was because this had completely broken too many fixed frames of Qin Xing's life. When Zhuang Zhou and Nangong walked past Qin Ran with Qin Xing, she finally saw his current appearance clearly. His clothes were untidy. His beard was unshaven. His hair was messy. His eyes were dull. His face was pale. His lips were chapped. He looked weak. Tears welled up in Qin Ran's eyes. She forced herself to turn her head. In the end, she did not break down. Then she said to the people of the Song family, Uncle Song, we will leave first. Sorry to bother you. Then she thought of something and said, Uncle Song, I hope you can keep what happened today a secret for me. My father does not want others to know about this. I understand. Song Hongtu nodded and smiled bitterly. Then the people of the Song family watched the people of the Qin family leave. The looks in the eyes of the other people of the Song family were somewhat complicated. Song Jiqiu was worried about Qin Xing. After sitting down, Song Hongtu lit a cigarette and said with emotion, I did not expect this. It is so unexpected. I am still in a daze. Song Ryu did not smoke. He only drank occasionally. He replied, The world is unpredictable. We never know what will happen. This young man's life is really full of ups and downs. Song Jianing was not so emotional. After all, he did not have much contact with Qin Xing. He just felt a little scared. Dad, thank you for not doing anything. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. Song Hongtu shook his head and said, Let's not talk about this. Jianing, everyone who knows about this today should keep their mouths shut. If I hear a word, I will not let it go easily. I know. I will arrange it right now. Song Jianing replied in a hurry. It was obvious that the Qin family did not want others to know about this. After all, this news was somewhat influential. The Song family naturally could not offend the Qin family. Song Ryu lowered his head and smiled bitterly. He looked at Song Jiqiu beside him. His first idea had been overthrown. Everything would take its course. He did not want to care about it anymore. If Qin Xing could start over with a woman, it would certainly be a good thing. However, if he stopped, it would not be a bad thing. Because Qin Xing was not the Qin Xing in the past. There would be too many variables in the future. Moreover, his daughter might not be able to adapt to the environment of the Qin family. Outside, the Qin family had already gotten in the car. Zhuang Zhou and Nangong took Qin Xing to sit in the car in front. Zhuang Zhou drove, and Nangong sat in the back to take care of Qin Xing. Qin Xing closed his eyes and leaned against the window. He looked a little painful. Nangong was at a loss, but did not dare to disturb Qin Xing. Qin Ran and Gongsun sat in the car in front. This was what Gongsun had arranged on their way here. He was afraid that there would be other mistakes. Gong Sun sat in the passenger seat, and Qin Ran sat in the back. Gong Sun wanted to say something. He hesitated for a long time and said, "Ran Ran." The look in Qin Ran's eyes was a little complicated. She was a little worried about Qin Sheng's mental state. She directly stopped Gong Sun and said, "Uncle Gong Sun, call him and tell him that we will go back to Beijing 2 days later. I am a little worried about my brother." Gong Sun nodded in a hurry and said, "Okay, I will call him now." After a while, Qin Chang'an's call was connected. Gong Sun repeated what Qin Ran said. Qin Chang'an just said, "I got it." Then he hung up. On the way back to the hotel, no one spoke in the car in front or the car in the back. Everything was very quiet. Half an hour later, they arrived at the entrance of the hotel. As soon as the car in the back stopped, Qin Ran took the lead and ran out. Then she went straight to the car in front. In the car in front, Nangong opened the door for Qin Sheng and was about to help him out of the car. Before Qin Sheng completely got out of the car, Qin Ran had already rushed over. Under everyone's surprised eyes, she hugged Qin Sheng without hesitation. She could not control herself anymore. She broke down in an instant and burst into tears. Chapter 344. Where to go? At the entrance of the hotel, Qin Ran's cries attracted many passers-by's attention. Seeing such a beautiful woman crying, everyone would have tender feelings for her, but no one dared to disturb her. When Qin Ran saw Qin Sheng for the first time, she only dared to cry silently, because she had promised Qin Chang'an that she would not recognize Qin Sheng, so she was afraid of arousing Qin Sheng's suspicion. This time, Qin Ran finally did not have to worry about anything anymore. She did not have to hide behind Qin Sheng, and could only peep at him silently. She did not have to worry about him secretly but could do nothing about it. She did not have to cry secretly in the middle of the night or when there was no one around. From today, from this moment on, the separation of more than 20 years could finally end. From now on, she could openly tell everyone that this was her brother, her biological brother. In the future, if anyone dared to bully Qin Sheng, she could stand up for him without hesitation. Gong Sun felt a little emotional. Others did not know how deep Qin Ran's feelings for Qin Sheng were, how much suffering she had gone through in the past 20 years, and how many conflicts she had had with Qin Chang'an because of this, but he knew it better than anyone else. When they were young, the relationship between the sister and the brother was very deep. At that time, Qin Sheng, who was a few years younger than Qin Ran, would stand in front of her and protect her sister. If there was anything delicious or fun, he would give it to her immediately. This was the happiest memory of Qin Ran's childhood. Therefore, after Qin Sheng was taken away by the old master, Qin Ran suffered great pain. However, at that time, Qin Ran was still young and did not understand a lot of things. As she grew up, the pain became deeper and deeper. Today, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng finally recognized each other and reunited. The biggest crack in the Qin family would also be healed. There would be no more torture and pain in the future. Gong Sun was happy for the sister and the brother from the bottom of his heart, and also for Qin Chang'an. Zhuang Zhou sighed. If he had not experienced the experience of being separated from her brother for more than 20 years, he would not understand Qin Ran's feelings at this moment. Without all the halo and identity of Qin Ran, she was just an ordinary woman like most people. At this moment, he could understand her feelings. As for Nangong, she did not like Qin Sheng at first, but this scene made her eyes red. She thought that she was cruel, but seeing Qin Ran like this, she could not help but cry. As an orphan, she understood this feeling. If it wasn't for the Qin clan, she didn't know where she would be right now, and what kind of life would she be living. Qin Sheng was somewhat at a loss. He was still immersed in his own spiritual world, thinking about many things in the past. However, the more he thought about it, the messier it became. The more he thought about it, the more contradictions and doubts he had. Qin Sheng did not know what to do with the woman in his arms who was crying her heart out, whom he had met a few times in the past, and now claimed to be his sister. However, he could feel the deep love this woman had for him. If there was no love, she would not be so sad. He seemed to finally understand why this woman had cried silently when he first met her. She had even said that he looked like a friend of hers. She should have known at that time that he was her brother. In the end, he slowly hugged the woman in his arms and patted her back gently. He did not know why he did that. It seemed to be a subconscious action. Because countless broken memories floated through his mind, a familiar feeling began to arise spontaneously. Perhaps this was the so-called blood and kinship. Sister, Qin Sheng muttered to himself. This sentence was only said to himself. In the past, he and his grandfather depended on each other. Qin Sheng had always thought that he had no other relatives except his grandfather. Today, he suddenly had a sister and a father. What about his mother? Qin Sheng's unintentional action made Qin Ran, who was crying, tremble all over. She thought that Qin Sheng was calling her sister. Over the years, she had heard many people call her sister. However, she had not heard this most familiar voice for more than 20 years. Although Qin Sheng had also called her sister in Hangzhou, it was just a respectful title. It was completely different from calling her sister today. Even so, she was so happy that she cried at that time. Qin Ran was even more excited. She hugged Qin Sheng tightly again. So she waited quietly for her to finish crying. She had suppressed it for more than 20 years. Today, it was time to vent it unscrupulously. After an unknown period of time, Qin Ran finally vented enough. The number of times she had cried this year was equivalent to the number of tears she had cried in the first half of her life. She would not cry so much in the future, because the future would be filled with laughter. Qin Ran let go of Qin Sheng and said with a smile through her tears, "Sorry, I made your clothes wet." She cried and laughed at the same time. People who did not know her would really think that she was crazy. The woman in front of him was like a pear blossom in the rain. Her tears even ruined her makeup, which made her delicate face a little pale. Of course, Qin Sheng would not blame her. Even if she was not his sister, it was also a man's honor to lend a beautiful woman a shoulder. Moreover, the more he looked at the woman in front of him, the more he felt a long-lost sense of familiarity. Then he naturally reached out his hand and gently wiped away the tears hanging on the woman's face. This ordinary action melted Qin Ran's heart. It was like the warm sun in winter, making people feel extremely comfortable and warm. Because she thought of when she was young, every time she cried, her brother would also stand in front of her and stretch out his hand to wipe her tears, comforting her in a childish voice. "Sister, don't cry, don't cry. Let's go in. I don't like to be surrounded by people." Only then did Qin Ran notice that there were many passers-by around. She was a little embarrassed and blushed, but she did not feel embarrassed. Because this was her brother, she could do whatever she wanted. It was just this once, and she did not care what others thought of her. Gongsun and Nangong escorted Qin Sheng and Qin Ran into the hotel. After Qin Ran told Gongsun to call Qin Chang'an and delay their return to Beijing for 2 days, Gongsun had already arranged to book a new room for Qin Sheng. In the hotel elevator, Qin Ran stared at Qin Sheng again and again, as if she wanted to see something. Her eyes were full of tenderness and love. If people did not know that they were siblings, they might think that they were a couple. Gongsun and Nangong did not know whether to laugh or cry, but they could understand. Qin Sheng felt a little embarrassed being stared at. He had no choice but to look at the LCD screen in the elevator. Qin Ran muttered in a low voice, "It's time to cut your hair and shave your beard. Your clothes are smelly. I'll buy 2 sets of clothes for you later. What do you want to eat for lunch? I'll ask the hotel to make it for you or send someone to buy it for you." Qin Ran had never been so concerned about other men. Even Qin Chang'an did not receive such treatment. This made Nangong and Gongsun, who were beside her, stunned. Qin Sheng did not answer because he had not adapted to this identity. He was still thinking about many things, so he did not know how to answer. Finally, they arrived at their floor. Qin Sheng never felt that the time spent in the elevator would be so long. After the elevator door opened, he could not wait to get out, as if he was escaping from a famine. Qin Ran, who was behind him, covered her mouth and giggled when she saw her brother's embarrassing look. Gong Sun took Qin Sheng to his room. After the door opened, the others followed Qin Sheng in. Qin Sheng urgently needed to be alone for a while, so he finally turned around and said, "I want to be alone for a while." Qin Ran came to her senses. She was a little too excited and forgot how Qin Sheng felt at this moment. So she replied, Okay. You stay alone for a while. We'll be in the next room. If you need anything, call me." After saying this, Qin Ran quickly walked to the table, found the hotel's paper and pen, and left her phone number. Qin Sheng hesitated for a few seconds and said, "Well, I want to smoke." Qin Ran was afraid that if Qin Sheng did not have any request, he would really treat her as an outsider. Hearing this, she said happily, "I'll ask someone to buy it for you." "Anything else?" Qin Sheng shook his head and said, "No." After saying this, he turned around and walked to the balcony of the room. His meaning was already very clear, that was to see them off. Qin Ran was very sensible. She directly left with Gong Sun, Nangong, and the others and closed the door on the way. After everyone left, Qin Sheng could finally be alone. At this moment, he felt that everything in front of him might be real, and he was also real. This was not a dream, nor did he travel to another parallel space. Qin Sheng let down all his vigilance and directly lay on the bed. At this moment, he did not want to think about anything. He just wanted to sleep for a while because he was really too tired. In the next room, Gong Sun was making a call to arrange for his subordinates to go out and buy cigarette. However, Qin Ran had forgotten to ask Qin Sheng what kind of cigarettes he wanted to smoke. So Gong Sun could only ask his subordinates to buy packs of cigarettes that were commonly seen in the market. It was estimated that the boss who sold the cigarettes would be dumbfounded by then. Nangong was a little worried and said, "Sister, will he be okay to leave him alone?" Based on Qin Ran's understanding of Qin Sheng during this period, she knew that Qin Sheng was not that kind of person. Hence, she said confidently, "He may not be able to accept what happened today in a short period of time. He needs time to adjust. But he won't do stupid things. After all, he still has a lot of things to do." Nangong nodded and said, "That's good." Qin Ran looked at Nangong and then said with interest, "Girl, according to age, you should call Qin Sheng brother. So in the future, you will not only have a sister, but also a brother." Nangong subconsciously muttered in a low voice, "I will not call him brother." "What?" Qin Ran did not hear clearly and asked. Nangong smiled awkwardly. At this moment, she dared not to say anything bad about Qin Sheng. Otherwise, as his sister, Qin Ran, would definitely be angry. So she changed the topic and said, "Sister, don't you want to buy clothes for him? Let me buy them for you." "Oh, I almost forgot about this. Let's go together." Qin Ran did not give this task to Nangong. This was the first time that she bought clothes for her brother. Of course, she had to go by herself. She really did not trust others. Nangong did not know whether to laugh or cry. With such a sister, Qin Sheng would probably faint in happiness in the future. Who would dare to bully him? Nangong pointed at Qin Ran's crying face and said, "Sister, are you going out like this?" Only then did Qin Ran understand. She hurriedly ran into the bathroom to put on makeup. Qin Sheng slept for a long time. When he woke up, it was already evening. The sky outside was slightly dark, and the night view of the city was just beginning to be lit. This time, Qin Sheng slept very comfortably. He had not slept so comfortably in this period of time. Every night, he would think about too many things. In the end, He could not sleep at night and was even more absent-minded. He turned on the light. When he was ready to get up, Qin Shing found that someone had covered him with a quilt. This made Qin Shing feel warm in his heart. Because he was directly lying on the bed, he did not know when he fell asleep. The quilt was pressed under his body. The quilt on his body must have been brought by someone outside for him. After getting up, Qin Shing saw a lot of things on the table. There were already cold dishes, newly bought clothes, and miscellaneous cigarettes. Qin Shing was suddenly absent-minded. He recalled what had happened in the morning in an instant. This time, Qin Shing finally knew that everything was true. Chapter 345. The Truman Show? To be honest, it's not difficult to write the climax. What's difficult is the calm period after the climax. This book has 1,000,000 words. Now it's the most critical turning period of the book. This turning is related to the logic of the front and the back, especially the change in Qin Shing's mind. How can he accept this identity reasonably? Otherwise, he can't write anymore. So it's a bit difficult for me to write these chapters. I hope you can understand. Ever since Qin Shing could remember things, he had always firmly believed that he had no other relatives apart from his grandfather. Although he had asked his grandfather before, his grandfather had never told him about the past. Qin Shing thought his grandfather didn't want to mention the sad past. After all, there were many orphans in the world, but most of them were born because of tragedies. For an old man, it was very cruel to let him recall the sad past. So Qin Shing never asked again. However, today Qin Ran, a woman whom he had only met a few times, suddenly appeared and told him that he was not an orphan. He had a sister and a father, which completely shattered his fixed cognition for so many years. Of course, Qin Shing had a lot of contradictions in his heart. First of all, he had to confirm whether it was true. If it was false, there was nothing to say. If it was true, there would be too many problems, because he had to reorganize the first half of his life and doubt many things that he didn't have to doubt before. For example, was his grandfather his biological grandfather? If his grandfather was his biological grandfather, he had parents and a sister. Why did he depend on his grandfather in Xi'an? Why didn't his family look for him all these years? Why did they not find him until today? Or maybe this grandfather was not his biological grandfather, but a bad person who took him away and separated him from his family for so many years? And the next thing was why Qin Ran cried when she saw him for the first time. Did she know he was her brother at that time? But why didn't she tell the truth at that time? Or was there something that she couldn't say? She didn't recognize him when they met in Hangzhou, and then in Tsingtao today? What was all this for? Then there was the problem of Zhuangzhou. Zhuangzhou appeared earlier than Qin Ran. If Zhuangzhou hadn't appeared at the last moment in Mount Jiuhua, he would have died. Then what was the relationship between Zhuangzhou and Qin Ran? What was Zhuangzhou's identity? Zhuangzhou said he had a relationship with his grandfather. Was it true? After that, it was Zhuangzhou who arranged for him and Lin Su to go to Xiamen. Then, he met Qin Ran in Xiamen. Obviously, Qin Ran and Zhuangzhou knew each other at that time. Later, Zhuangzhou arranged for him to go to Hangzhou and recommended him to Chowda. He met Qin Ran in Hangzhou. Obviously, Qin Ran and her so-called father knew about it. Because what seemed like a coincidence at that time, when he looked back, was actually intentional. Therefore, there was a possibility that Qin Ran and her father knew everything that happened after he left Mount Jiuhua. There was an even more frightening possibility that they already knew of his existence when he was in Shanghai. Qin Shing suddenly recalled that the first time he met Qin Ran was when they brushed past each other at the Yuerong Manor Hotel. If one were to make a bold guess, they might have known about him even earlier. All of a sudden, Qin Shing trembled all over. The more he thought about it, the more terrified he felt. Why? because he felt that his life might be controlled by others. The others might be the sister and the father behind her today, Jiang Xianbang in Shanghai, Zhuang Zhou who appeared later, Chowda in Hangzhou, or others such as Xue Qinyan and so on. They might all be the chess pieces of the sister and the father behind her, while he was just a puppet in the palm of their hands. Qin Sheng was a little angry. He did not expect that the truth might be more complicated and frightening than what he saw today. If it was really like that, he would have lived in vain all these years. He had been living in the arrangements of others, just like the hero in the world of the Truman Show. He thought that he was really living in real life, but in fact, he was living in someone else's program. Everything was arranged. The last question was, what was the background of this sister and the father behind her? How could they have such great power to mobilize so many resources? It should be known that these people were not ordinary people. Any one of them was a character that most ordinary people looked up to. And what happened in the Song family today, everyone in the Song family obviously knew this sister. For ordinary people like him, a rich and powerful family like the Song family was something that no one dared to challenge. For example, the Song family could easily control his life and death today. However, when this sister stood in front of everyone in the Song family and said a few words, the Song family did not hesitate to let him go. They did not even have the slightest intention to resist. It should be known that he had offended the Song family to death. What exactly was her background that made a rich and powerful family like the Song family so afraid of her? There were too many questions. Qin Sheng had already believed that all of this was the truth. He first took a shower and shaved. Then, he calmed himself down completely and stopped letting his imagination run wild. Instead, he tried to sort out the logic between these things seriously. He found liqueur from the pile of cigarettes, because he had been smoking liqueur during these days in Hangzhou. Qin Sheng sat on the balcony and smoked one cigarette after another. He was deep in thought like an old monk who was meditating. In the end, his eyes became more and more profound, and his face became more and more serious. He had too many questions, so he had to find Qin Ran to clarify some things. After making the decision, Qin Sheng finally put out the cigarette butt, stood up, and walked into the room. After hesitating for a while, he still changed into the clothes that Qin Ran bought for him. Qin Ran already knew Qin Sheng's figure very well. Moreover, she had good taste. After all, she was the daughter of a rich family, and the environment that she came into contact with since childhood was also the upper class. Naturally, the clothes that she bought for Qin Sheng were very suitable and suited his temperament. Of course, the price was not cheap. She directly went to the most high-end shopping mall in Qingdao. Qin Sheng was originally a clothes rack, so naturally, his height was needless to say. As for his figure, it was the perfect proportion that even models would envy. After all, Qin Sheng persisted in exercising since childhood, and later on, he often went to the gym. People make the man, just as horses make the saddle. When he came out after changing his clothes, he was very different instantly. It was estimated that Qin Ran, Nangong, and the others would be stunned. Qin Sheng had surprised Lin Su many times before, because he usually did not pay attention to these kinds of appearances. In the next room, Gong Sun, Zhuang Zhou, and Nangong had been accompanying Qin Ran and waiting for Qin Sheng. They had already had dinner, but Qin Ran had not eaten yet, saying that she wanted to wait for Qin Sheng to eat together. This sister really loved her brother so much. Zhuang Zhou and Gong Sun were calmer. Gong Sun had to answer the phone from time to deal with some things in Beijing. After all, he was the housekeeper of the whole Qin family. Big and small things had to go through him to deal with, including many people who wanted to meet Qin Chanan, etc., had to go through his door first. After all, Nangong was young and somewhat impatient. She waited for quite a while and said rather impatiently, "Sister, he has been sleeping for such a long time, will he be okay?" Halfway through, Gongsun went in to send cigarettes once, Nangong and Qin Ran went in to send clothes once, and in the end, Qin Ran went in to send dinner again. Seeing that Qin Sheng had been sleeping all the time, they did not disturb him. Qin Ran said in a very distressed manner, "He is too tired, let him have a good sleep." Nangong muttered in her heart, was this Qin Sheng born from a pig in his previous life? How could he be so sleepy? He has not slept enough since noon. At most, she could only sleep for 6 hours. Moreover, during this period of time she had slept even less, so her condition was not that bad. Just as they were talking, the doorbell rang. Gongsun walked over to open the door unhurriedly, and then he saw Qin Sheng, who had changed his clothes and was standing outside the door, looking much more energetic than he was in the morning. Gongsun was a little stunned, and then he subconsciously shouted, "Young master." Young master? This word was really refreshing, and it was the first time for Qin Sheng to hear someone call him like this, which made him feel a little strange. He had been trampled on by all kinds of young masters, but he did not expect that one day someone would call him like this. Qin Sheng did not know how to answer, so he could only nod awkwardly and said, "Is she here?" Of course, Gongsun knew who Qin Sheng was asking about. Of course it was Qin Ran, so he hurriedly stepped aside and said, "Yes, she is inside." Qin Ran and the others had already heard the conversation outside. Of course, they knew that it was Qin Sheng, so they hurriedly stood up. Qin Sheng walked in slowly, staring at Zhuang Zhou with a very complicated look, and finally called him Uncle Zhuang. No matter what, after all, Zhuang Zhou had once saved him, and later on in Xiamen and Hangzhou, it was Zhuang Zhou who had helped him. Therefore, without Zhuang Zhou, there would not be the current him. As for other things, he would wait until he figured them out. Zhuang Zhou knew that Qin Sheng had a lot of questions about him. Qin Sheng was such a smart person, how could he not understand? However, he was still quite satisfied with Qin Sheng calling him Uncle Zhuang, so he smiled and nodded. After that, Qin Sheng looked at Qin Ran. He was very conflicted in his heart. He did not know how to face Qin Ran. After all, he was still not sure about this identity. It was impossible for him to act close to her. If he acted cold, it would hurt Qin Ran. After sleeping for so long, you must be hungry. I will ask the hotel to make some food. What do you want to eat? Qin Ran did not wait for Qin Sheng to speak and took the initiative to show concern. Qin Sheng did not answer this question, but directly said, "I want to talk to you." Qin Sheng wanted to talk to Qin Ran. No matter what he wanted to talk about, Qin Ran would be very happy, because this could let her and Qin Sheng interact more and understand more, and their feelings could be cultivated slowly. "Okay, then let's talk while eating," Qin Ran pursed her lips and said with a smile. Qin Sheng only wanted to figure out those questions, so he said, "I'm not hungry yet." Qin Ran's hungry stomach had long been growling. If it were not for the fact that she wanted to wait for Qin Sheng to eat together, she, who always had a regular diet, would have eaten already. Therefore, Qin Ran said with a little grievance, "I'm hungry." Qin Sheng was stunned. He stared at Qin Ran thoughtfully, seemed to understand something, and finally nodded and said, "Okay." Chapter 346. Now, Gongsun, the butler, called the hotel to arrange a private room. Qin Ran took Qin Sheng to the hotel's Chinese restaurant and did not let anyone follow them. Firstly, she was afraid that Qin Sheng would feel uncomfortable. Secondly, she wanted to be alone with Qin Sheng, otherwise their relationship would not improve. Handsome men and beautiful women were always the focus of any place. When Qin Sheng and Qin Ran appeared in the Chinese restaurant, they did attract countless people's attention. Qin Ran was a good-looking and elegant beauty. Even if her brother was ugly, he would not be that ugly. After all, his family genes were there. Moreover, Qin Sheng was not ugly, but he was not particularly handsome. He just had a unique charm, which was an advantage that men of the same age did not have. It was too depressing in the private room. Besides, Qin Shing was afraid that the atmosphere would be awkward when he was alone with Qin Ran. He was even more afraid that there would be awkward silence. Finally, he chose a seat by the window. There was no one else around, except for their table. Outside the window was the night view of Tsingtao. They could see the bright lights of the city and the stars of the Olympic Sailing Center in the distance, which made Qin Shing feel more or less comfortable. "What do you want to eat?" After they sat down, Qin Ran put her coat and bag on the chair next to her, took the menu from the waiter, and asked with a smile. Qin Shing grew up in Xi'an, of course. His favorite food was noodles. He did not stand on ceremony, because he was indeed a little hungry. After all, he had not eaten since last night. So he replied, "It would be best if there are noodles. If not, there should be steamed buns." The waiter did not know whether to laugh or cry when he ordered dishes in the Chinese restaurant of a five-star hotel. However, he was a waiter of a five-star hotel after all, and he still had this kind of quality. Moreover, he could tell that these two were either rich or noble, so he still kept smiling. Qin Ran did not say anything. She liked Qin Shing to be honest in front of her, so she ordered a bowl of noodles for him. However, she thought that it would not be so authentic. Then she ordered 4 dishes and a bowl of rice. "Do you have a lot of things to ask?" Qin Ran stared at Qin Shing and said with a smile. Since she returned to the hotel, she had been smiling. She had not been so happy for many years. Qin Shing nodded and looked a little serious. Qin Ran continued, "What do you want to ask? Just ask. As long as I know, I will definitely tell you." Qin Shing said bluntly, "Ever since I could remember, the only relative I had was my grandfather. Since I was young, my grandfather and I depended on each other. Later, we had foster parents. Now it has been more than 20 years. So when you suddenly appeared and told me that you were my sister and that I had parents, I didn't quite believe it." This question was expected, so Ran said with a smile. "I knew you would ask this question. I have also thought about it." "I have, Qin said. "This is also why I met you in Xiamen and Hangzhou previously. It's just that I wanted to get to know you first and then tell you the truth. But later, I felt that no matter how I told you, it would be hard for you to accept it in a short period of time. That's why we met like this today." After saying that, she took out her wallet from the bag beside her and took out the photo that she had treasured for many years. She slowly handed it to Qin Shing and said, "This was taken when you were young, before you left Beijing. Grandpa took us to the Forbidden City. You definitely don't remember it, but you must know the little boy in the photo. I will tell you a lot about my childhood and show you a lot of photos. If you still don't believe me, you should believe in science. Nowadays, DNA testing technology is very advanced." Qin Shing took the photo in doubt. This was a yellowed color photo. The background was the square in front of the Hall of Supreme Harmony in the Forbidden City. The sun was shining brightly and there were no clouds in the sky. A 7 or 8-year-old girl was holding the hand of a 3-year-old boy. The girl's face was red. She looked a little shy in front of the camera. The innocent little boy was not restrained at all. He showed his white teeth and smiled brightly. "This is me?" Qin Shing asked to himself naturally. The photos of him when he was young were taken after he came to Xi'an. The age difference between him and this good photo was 3 or 4 years. Children grew up faster, so there was still some gap. But the outline could still be distinguished, so Qin Shing was a little surprised. Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You can deny it." Just as Qin Shing was in a daze, Qin Ran reached out to hold his arm. Under Qin Shing's astonished gaze, she took off the old Shanghai watch on his wrist, which had been worn for God knows how many years. Qin Ran looked at the watch and said, "Do you know the story of this watch?" Qin Shing said thoughtfully, "I just heard from Grandpa that this is the only gift my mother left for me. So I always wear it." Well, this watch was indeed left for you by my mother. But this watch was originally Grandpa's, and this watch is a little special. No one can buy it even if they have money. This is a custom-made watch made by the Shanghai watchmaking factory for high-level officials and above. Later, Grandpa gave it to my mother, and my mother left it to you. No one else has this honor. Qin Ran said slowly. She knew everything that Qin Shing did not know. The information revealed in this sentence shocked Qin Shing a little. First of all, he confirmed the origin of this watch. He had already begun to believe that Qin Ran was his sister. He began to look forward to the woman who had left him the only gift, which was his biological mother. Secondly, the story of this watch. It was a custom-made watch for high-level officials, so his grandfather was at least a high-level official, or even higher. His mother's identity was naturally a member of the Red faction. As for what she did, it was unclear. What about his father? Thinking of the speculations about the Qin family today, Qin Shing became more and more curious about his real identity. Qin Shing slowly digested this information. It was really shocking to him. But he still had questions, so he continued, I want to know why I was taken away by Grandpa. Or is this Grandpa not my biological grandpa, but someone else that I have never known? Qin Shing's question made Qin Ran a little happy, because Qin Shing seemed to have begun to accept his new identity. This was a good start. She explained slowly, You don't have to doubt this. This grandpa who has been with you for more than 20 years is not only your grandpa, but also my grandpa. It's just that in my memory, I don't have much of an impression of Grandpa, because at that time, he was not in Beijing most of the time. Even my parents rarely saw him. Similarly, I more or less hate him because he took you away and caused me to be separated from you and your brother for more than 20 years. Qin Shing let out a long sigh and was completely relieved. This was because the thing that he was most worried about did not happen. This grandpa, who had been with him for more than 20 years, was his biological grandpa. After all, in terms of feelings, of course, he was closest to his grandpa. If this grandpa was not his biological grandpa, as he thought, it might be really difficult for Qin Shing to accept it, and he would not be able to recover in a short time. Qin Ran said honestly, As for why Grandpa took you away, I still don't know until now. If you want to know, you can ask our dad when we go back to Beijing. She really did not understand what had happened in the past. She had asked Qin Chang'an many times, but Qin Chang'an's answer was always vague. This answer made Qin Shing somewhat surprised. He stared at Qin Ran for a while, and did not continue to ask. Qin Ran asked with a smile, Do you have any more questions? Of course, Qin Shing had a lot of questions. How could it end like this? He continued to ask, When did you know that I am your brother? Qin Ran said calmly, I only found out when you were in Xiamen. That's why I went to Xiamen to look for you. Qin Shing frowned and said, Then why did you know the truth and reconcile with me at that time? Qin Ran sighed. She knew that Qin Shing would definitely ask, but she had already thought of a solution. Since it was Qin Chang'an's arrangement, she would push everything to him and let him explain to Qin Shing. Hence, Qin Ran replied, Because our dad did not allow me to reconcile with him. He said that he had other arrangements. That's why we did not reconcile until today. This answer did not satisfy Qin Shing, because he had sorted out the logic of what had happened before and after. Hence, he said, No, we met once in your own manor in Shanghai. Did we? Why didn't I know? Qin Ran said in surprise. After thinking for a long time, she really could not remember meeting Qin Shing in Shanghai. Hence, she frowned and said, I only found out that you are my brother when you were in Xiamen. So if we really met before, I definitely did not know who you are. This explanation seemed to make sense. Qin Shing nodded silently. That time was just a passing, maybe Qin Ran really did not remember. Qin Sheng shook his head and frowned as he said, "It's still not right. You said that you only found out my identity in Xiamen, but Zhuangzhou saved my life in Mount Zhihua. If not for him, I would have died in Mount Zhihua. How do you explain this? Everything can't be so coincidental. How could he appear in Mount Zhihua? Obviously, when I was in Shanghai, he knew my identity. That's why he secretly watched me and only appeared in Mount Zhihua," Qin Sheng said, shaking his head and frowning. Qin Ran really admired this brother of hers. Obviously, he had sorted out everything. It was too difficult to fool him. She could only say, "I can only say that when I knew your identity, it was when you were recuperating in Xiamen. As for when Uncle Zhuang found out and how he saved you, I really have no idea. You may have to ask him when you go back to Beijing." "Okay, I have another question." Qin Sheng did not expect that Qin Ran did not know about this. He did not know whether it was true or not. But since Qin Ran had already said that his father in Beijing, whom he had never met before, knew, he could ask him directly. There was no need to go through so much trouble. "Go ahead," Qin Ran said calmly. "How did you know I was in Tsingtao? How did you know about me and the Song family?" Qin Sheng's questions were very straightforward. He did not need to hide. Qin Ran laughed and said, "This question is relatively easy to answer. Because the identity you used was made for you by Uncle Zhuang. As long as we use the system to check, we will know where you are. So it is very easy to find you." Qin Ran did not dare to say that Zhuangzhou and Nangong had been secretly protecting Qin Sheng. This was because Qin Sheng had experienced too much during this period and suffered too many setbacks. Moreover, his friend had died because of him. If Qin Sheng knew the truth, he would obviously be angry. So before she met Qin Sheng, she, Gongsun, and Zhuangzhou had discussed countermeasures. They had to know what could be said and what could not be said. Qin Sheng did not say anything. This explanation was indeed very simple. Now it was the age of the internet with advanced technology. Everything needed an identity. As long as he used the system, he could indeed know his location. Seeing that Qin Sheng was deep in thought, Qin Ran asked casually, "Is there any problem?" Qin Sheng shook his head. Qin Ran knew too little. Only her father knew everything. Consequently, Qin Sheng could not wait to figure out the ins and outs of everything. He did not like the feeling of being played by others. Consequently, he said without hesitation, "Let's go to Beijing." When Qin Ran heard these 3 words, she was directly stunned. After a long time, she opened her mouth and said, "Now?" Chapter 347. An old house. At this moment, Qin Sheng's mentality had completely changed. At first, the news and the appearance of Qin Ran and Zhuangzhou shocked and confused him. Then, his imagination ran wild, and he felt that it was impossible. After that, Qin Sheng calmed down and understood that this was indeed the truth. No matter whether you believed it or not, he began to face it calmly instead of running away and rejecting it blindly. Then, he sorted out everything again and deduced the logic behind it. Now, Qin Sheng wanted to know the ins and outs of everything and figure out what the truth was. Since Qin Ran didn't know a lot of things, he would go to the person who knew everything. That was why he said that he would go back to Beijing without hesitation, because he didn't want to waste a second. Qin Ran had wanted him to stay in Tsingtao for a few more days, so that he could recover and have time to adjust and accept what had happened today. She did not expect that Qin Sheng would take the initiative to say that he wanted to go back to Beijing. Qin Ran was somewhat worried and happy at the same time. In the end, after careful consideration, Qin Ran still agreed to Qin Sheng's request. She immediately got up and called Gongsun to contact Air China to arrange the flight route. Generally, a domestic business jet route had to be applied for a day in advance, but for the Qin family, this was not a difficult matter. They only needed to contact China Airlines and then inform the Air Traffic Control Bureau. After all, this was a sudden matter, and they would not trouble others on normal days. After the call, Qin Ran looked at the dishes that had just been served and said helplessly, "I have to fill my stomach first. It will take a while for them to make the arrangements." Qin Shing did not refuse. He was already very hungry at this time. He lowered his head and began to wolf down the noodles, not caring about how Qin Ran, who was sitting opposite him, would look at him. Qin Ran was not surprised at all by Qin Shing's eating style. It was the same as when they were young. If it was not her younger brother, she would not have believed it. She remembered that when he was young, whether it was his parents or his maternal grandparents, they had always reprimanded him for this. However, Qin Shing still went his own way and had no intention of changing at all. Qin Ran didn't have any objections to this. There were too many rules and frameworks in life, which always bound everyone and made people's lives very tiring and hard. Therefore, most of the time, she didn't need to care about what others thought of her. She just needed to live freely and freely. For example, the first uncle who had an epiphany. Everyone thought that he had a bright future ahead of him and that he would definitely be a leader in the future. However, he suddenly retreated and went into seclusion in the mountains to cultivate his moral character. This shocked everyone. In the hotel room, after Gongsun hung up Qin Ran's call, he prepared to call the person in charge of Air China's business jet company. At the same time, he also had to call the leader of the Air Traffic Control Bureau. Otherwise, the business jet company would not be able to handle it in a short time. "What's wrong?" Seeing that Gongsun was in a daze, Nangong asked curiously. Gongsun shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Prepare to go back to Beijing." Nangong and Zhuangzhou looked at each other in dismay. This young master really knew how to make trouble. Couldn't he wait until tomorrow? On the way from the hotel to the Qingdao Luting International Airport, Qin Shing, Qin Ran, and Gongsun were in the same car. Nangong and Zhuangzhou were in the car behind them. The drivers were all employees of the Qingdao company. Qin Shing liked it very much. Every night, when he was in the car, he could enjoy and observe the night view of a city through the window. However, before he had time to enjoy the city of Qingdao, he had to leave in a hurry. One city after another. Since Qin Shing had left Xi'an, he had never stopped moving. He had been drifting. He had never stayed in any city for more than a year. The city he stayed in for the longest time was Xiamen, which was also the quietest time in the past few years. The next stop was Beijing. Qin Shing did not know how long he could stay in this city after he figured out the truth about his parentage. At the helipad of Qingdao Luting International Airport, after the security check, the two cars of the Qin family directly drove to the helipad. This somewhat surprised Qin Shing. He had thought that he could take any flight to Beijing, but he did not expect that his sister, Qin Ran, would arrange a private plane. However, he did not know whether it was the private plane of the Qin family or the kind of business jet of the airline company. Qin Shing had never taken a private plane before. He had only seen it on TV and the internet. All the rich people in the country owned private planes. The Gulfstream and Challenger series were their favorite. This plane seemed to be the Gulfstream series, but Qin Shing did not know the specific model. After getting out of the car, Qin Shing and the others boarded the plane under the guidance of the two beautiful air stewardesses. Qin Shing followed Qin Ran to the passenger cabin. He looked at the private plane calmly and did not appear to be very surprised. The passenger cabin was very spacious. The interior decoration and facilities looked very luxurious and high-tech. The seats were all leather sofas. There were single and double seats. There was also a sofa for multiple seats. They were scattered in the cabin irregularly and could seat more than 10 people. Qin Shing guessed that this was either a Gulfstream G550 or a Gulfstream G650. Otherwise, there would not be such a big space. Qin Ran randomly found a seat and sat down. Qin Shing sat opposite Qin Ran. Gong Sun, Zhuang Zhou, and Nangong all sat in front. They did not disturb Qin Ran and Qin Shing and gave them some space to be alone. The two air stewardesses started their normal service and asked the VIPs what they needed. I did not expect that my first time taking a private plane would be under such circumstances. It's really interesting. Qin Shing smiled bitterly and joked, the world of the rich is really different. Qin Ran did not like Qin Shing to say such things. It would make her feel distressed because she knew that Qin Shing had not had it easy all these years. She lived a comfortable life in Siju City and did not have to worry about food and clothing. Qin Shing had suffered with his grandfather since he was a child. In the past few years, he had experienced too many setbacks and grievances. Gulfstream G650, the most advanced large business jet in the world. Our showy father just bought it last year. If you want, it will be yours from now on. I will get it for you when we go back to Beijing, Qin Ran said very generously. It seemed that as long as Qin Shing asked, she would do her best to do anything. It was indeed a Gulfstream G650. Qin Shing had seen the introduction about Gulfstream G650. The cruising speed was up to Mach 0.925, the longest range could reach 13,000 kilometers, 19 seats and so on. Of course, the price was not ordinary. It was 400 million. This was not something that ordinary rich people could have. Qin Shing was full of curiosity about his father whom he had not met yet. Also, he did not expect that he, a poor loser who could be trampled on by others, would become a super-rich second generation in the blink of an eye. This was really dark humor. Qin Shing did not respond to this topic. The most money he had seen in his life was when he fought in an underground boxing ring in Hangzhou. Chang Baji had won that time with his strength. Now, someone had given him a private jet. Wasn't this a fantasy story? I am sleepy. I will sleep for a while. Wake me up when we arrive, Qin Shing said to Qin Ran. He closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. Qin Ran smiled and nodded. Okay, then sleep for a while. I will wake you up when we arrive. After Qin Shing fell asleep, Qin Ran asked the air stewardess to bring a blanket and covered Qin Shing personally. More than an hour later, the Gulfstream G650 landed at the Capital International Airport. Gong Sun had already arranged everything. The Qin family's two Mercedes were already waiting on the tarmac. When Qin Shing woke up, he found himself covered with a gray blanket. Of course, he knew who had covered him with it. It was probably she who had covered him with the blanket in the hotel. Consequently, Qin Shing looked at Qin Ran and said sincerely, "Thank you." Qin Shing was not used to this new identity, so he was a little strange to Qin Ran. They were not close like siblings, but he knew that this sister was really good to him. He would remember all these in his heart. After getting in the car, the two Mercedes left the airport. Gong Sun had already finished the phone call. He turned around and asked, "Your father has a social engagement tonight. He is having tea and chatting with the leaders of the Ministry of Commerce and the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. He is not back yet. It is so late. Shall we go back to the Sihiyuan first?" This was the daily conversation between Gong Sun and Qin Ran. They did not hide it because of Qin Shing's presence. But when Qin Shing heard it, he was shocked at first, followed by more doubts. From the doubts at the beginning, to the fear of the Song family, to the most advanced Gulfstream private jet worth 400 million, and then to the talk with the leaders of the Ministry of Commerce and the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. Qin Shing became more and more curious about his father. His identity was really mysterious. Qin Ran thought for a moment and said, "Then let's go to the old house first." This was Qin Ran's original plan. But it was too late today. Obviously, Qin Shing wanted to see Qin Chang'an first, so she did not plan to take Qin Shing to the old house directly. But now Qin Chang'an was not back yet, so she still wanted to take Qin Shing to the old house first. Because for her, that was the real home. There were the common memories of her, Qin Shing, and her mother. There was nothing in the Sihiyuan that belonged to them. Okay. Gong Sun nodded silently. This was what he had expected. Then he told the driver to go directly to West Chang'an Street. The old house of the Qin family was on the West Chang'an Street. It was next to Yuantan and Dio Yutai's state guesthouse. It was called Sanlai, surrounded by ministries and commissions and their families. The community used to be called the Planning Commission Compound. Anyone who was familiar with the history of old Beijing would know that it was a magical place. The most famous one was the Red Tower Auditorium of the Planning Commission, which was the top of the 4 big auditoriums in old Beijing. The other 3 were the Geology Department, the Materials Department, and the CPPCC. Of course, this was not the most magical place of the Planning Commission compound. The most magical thing was that there were 21 deputy premiers and state councilors, more than 200 ministers and deputy ministers, and countless celebrities from all walks of life. This was the place that made it a legend. However, when the sign of the Planning Commission compound was removed, the legend of this place came to an end. Today, this place was already dilapidated. Most of the places had been reconstructed. The dilapidated courtyard was only occupied by some nostalgic or retired old people. Most of the young people had left and would only come back on weekends. The Qin family of 4 used to live here. Of course, old Master Qin was not there. He was a mysterious person. However, many of the Qin family's friends also lived here. This was the foundation of Qin Chang'an's success. Without those legendary stories, there would be no Qin Chang'an today. After the 2 cars drove into the compound, they made several turns and finally stopped in front of a building in courtyard number 3. Back then, the courtyard of the Planning Commission was very big, and it was an independent world. It had everything, so it was divided into several small courtyards. In the winter night, under the yellow street lights, these old houses made people a little nervous. They got out of the car one after another. Qin Ran looked up at the red 6-story building and smiled subconsciously. All her childhood memories were here. You guys wait downstairs, Qin Ran said to the others. This was her private space, which belonged to the Qin family. She did not want to be disturbed by outsiders. Qin Shing frowned slightly. He knew that this was definitely not the Qin family's home. His mysterious father would definitely not live here. After all, this place was very old. Therefore, he asked, "Where is this?" Qin Ran squinted and smiled. "This is our home. It is also the place where you lived when you were young." Home? Qin Shing murmured. This word was familiar to him but strange at the same time. It was because he had never had a real home. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.